Hi, my name is Rob, and welcome to OK Let's Talk. I'm your host, and today we're diving into the latest global reports from Al Jazeera and other networks. And we aren't just watching the news, we're breaking down the history and the why beyond the headlines to give you a deeper educational perspective. With that said, let's get to the analysis. Educational commentary and analysis falls under Fair Use, Section 107.
People. Israel blows up bridges in southern Lebanon as it steps up its assault against Hezbollah.
We are jiu-jitsuing the Iranians. We're using their own
Jiu-jitsuing
against them.
What a moron.
And the Trump administration defends its decision to lift sanctions on Iranian oil, saying it would bring down its profits.
Welcome everyone to the chat. Welcome to the live stream tonight. I hope you enjoy yourselves, and sorry I got to talk over this intro music so I don't get a copyright strike.
Further escalation
Welcome. Let's go.
A high-stakes standoff between the US and Iran over the Strait of Hormuz. That's a key waterway that Tehran has blocked for weeks. President Donald Trump issued an ultimatum on Saturday, saying the US will obliterate Iran's power plants if it doesn't open the strait within 48 hours.
I don't think Trump knows what that word means. He uses it too much.
But only those deemed as enemy ships will be blocked from passing through it. And it's also vowed a swift retaliation should Trump make good on his threat.
In reiteration of our previous warning, if any fuel or energy facilities in Iran are targeted, we will respond by targeting energy and technology institutions and desalination plants linked to America and the Zionist entity in the region.
On the ground, US and Israeli airstrikes are pounding communities across Iran. The Iranian Red Crescent shared these images. Those are from northwestern city of Tabriz.
I thought there was nothing left to hit over there. That's what Trump keeps saying, right? 8,000 targets, and they're obliterated.
From the capital, Tehran.
Yeah, we're still killing innocent civilians. It's a good way to get them on your side.
And it's multi-layered when it comes to the different authorities and sectors within the state, military, diplomacy, politicians. So they're all within one framework, which is retaliating to American interests in the region and Israel when it comes to the targeting of Iran's power plants. This is what we heard from the military and their spokesperson, who actually posted a map showing several power plants and facilities across the Gulf and in Israel. Also, we heard from them saying that the Strait of Hormuz will continue to be closed till these power plants are repaired. The Speaker of the Parliament, Mohammed Bakr Qalibaf,
sounds fair.
Influential politician and someone who is believed to be in the war room right now, also said that this is going to lead to retaliation, and later on he tweeted once again saying that this is going to also lead to retaliation towards American financial companies and whoever works with them. The foreign ministry, as you just read, Abbas Araghchi spoke about that the strait isn't closed actually, but it's the insurance companies who are hesitating because they fear the war of choice, as he said. And this
that's all it takes is fear to shut everything down.
They are exploiting the leverage they have on the Hormuz Strait, and this is causing disruptions in the energy market, especially if there's also another strait closed like Bab el-Mandab. Whenever the Houthis enter the war, then there will be another choke point, and there will be another global crisis. So this is what they are relying on right now, plus the retaliation that they are vowing to do in case they are attacked in their power plants. So Iran is trying its best during this war to raise the price, put more pain on other parties in order to pressure the United States to stop this war.
All right, well, we have correspondents across the globe in Baghdad, Amman, Beirut, Kuwait City, and also Washington, D.C. Let's start with Teresa Bow, who's there for us. Teresa, now we're almost halfway through that deadline that Trump is sort of self-imposing on Iran when it comes to the Hormuz Strait. But his original plan was to escort ships through. That seems to have gone away. Now he says he'll obliterate Iran's energy infrastructure.
Well, what we've been seeing is a different discourse, different messages coming from the President of the United States, especially on social media. He went on Friday of saying
because he's a demented loon.
Wind down the
That's
situation,
why.
and then on Saturday started to say that if Iran did not open the Strait of Hormuz, he would obliterate the power plants in the country. So it's suddenly a big change there, and it could be like a political strategy.
Taco
but
Sunday.
At the same time,
yes, it is.
Many are saying that he's changing his mind about what to do next. And it comes to initially the priority for this war was the attacking the nuclear site. Later on, regime change. And now we're seeing that the main priority is opening up the Strait of Hormuz. From this last week, we've been seeing Trump exerting pressure on the European Union, trying to get help in order or create a coalition to help open up the Strait of Hormuz. Until now, the EU has been reluctant to send any type of armed forces to help in this fight, basically saying that this is not their war, that this is not a war that they have endorsed. So we're just listening right now that President Trump spoke to the Prime Minister of the UK, Keir Starmer, about the necessity of opening up the strait, especially because of the economic impact that this has. But aside from all this changing message that we've been seeing, what we do know is that Marines, the 3 warships and 2,500 Marines are heading to the Middle East. They're from a very specific unit that are in charge
as
of
usual.
Ground operations,
starts a war, makes a mess, goes golfing,
among others. And there's big speculation about what they're going to be doing there. Since the very beginning of this war, Iran has been using mines, small boats, attacking the vessels that are from countries that are involved in the war against Iran, or that are involved in supporting countries that are involved in this war in Iran. So certainly it's not clear what these units are going to be doing, but certainly all eyes are on what task and what type of operations they'll be involved in.
All right, and Teresa, the U.S. Treasury Secretary has defended this decision to lift sanctions on stranded Iranian oil at sea for 30 days. Scott Bessent says it will allow Washington to limit Iran's oil profits.
About 140 million barrels are out on the water.
That's one day's worth.
We are jujitsuing the Iranians. We are using their own oil against them. We have a much better line of sight, to be clear, at Treasury when this oil goes to, if it goes to Indonesia, if it goes to Japan, if it goes to Korea, we have a much better line of sight and are able to block accounts that the oil goes into.
He seems very assured there in what he is saying, but is it assuring Americans, do we think?
He's a humble soybean farmer. Why are they asking him about global oil
we do know
problems?
That the United States has been doing all sorts of things to try to reduce the price of oil, at least here, using the strategic reserves that they have.
It's not going to lower the price of oil.
Sanctions on Russian oil, among other measures, trying for this whole war to have the smallest impact possible among the population. But when you walk around and you talk to people here, it is a huge concern. You go into the supermarkets and people are concerned about inflation. At the gas stations, they're also concerned about the rise of the price of gas. It has gone $1 since this war started. So suddenly this have a huge impact. And in this during this same interview that Bessent gave, he was basically explaining and saying that this new measure would not benefit Iran, because this measure has been criticized, mostly saying that Iran is going to benefit from this, from selling this oil. But Bessent, what he's saying is that Iran is already isolated from the international financial market. But there's been lots of criticism about this measure, about how the U.S. is benefiting a country that it is at war at right now. So there's a big strategy behind this. It's mostly political. There's midterm elections coming later this year. And
the GOP is going to get smoked
they say
in the
that
elections.
The price of oil will have a big impact.
Prices are going to remain high right into the
thanks very
fall.
much. That's the
That's
last
not
update
good
there
for
from
Trump and
Fraser
his
Boat in
party.
Washington, D.C. Well, the Iranian response to U.S. pressure over the flow of oil has been one of defiance. Iran's foreign minister, that's Abbas Araghchi, well, he says the Strait of Hormuz is not closed, but ships hesitate because insurers fear the war of choice the United States initiated, not Iran. He insists that freedom of navigation cannot exist without freedom of trade, respect both or accept neither. And joining us now live from Tehran is Abbas Aslani, a senior research fellow at the Center for Middle
Yes, we
East
will, Jim.
Strategic
Yes, we will.
Studies. So effectively, Iran is saying that they are allowing ships to go through that don't have any affiliation with the US or Israel.
Sarah, it seems that Iran is trying to somehow stop a kind of coalition against the country by trying to engage by a number of countries who try to coordinate with Iran in terms of the passage through this waterway. And in addition to that, Iran is trying to say that the strait is open and not closed, but it is only, not accessible for the U.S., Israel, as well as their allies who are supporting them in the ongoing aggression against the country. And as this goes on, it seems that the Strait of Hormuz is very much influential in the ongoing war between the two sides. And that is why Trump is fed up with the situation, and he doesn't seem to be tolerating this. That's why he's giving an ultimatum to Iran about opening this
little
strait.
Donnie's not getting his way, so he's throwing a fit as usual.
Might be approaching maybe sooner or later to the end of the hostility. It seems that the two sides are trying to set the terms about how to conclude this. It is a bit early to talk about the conclusion, but whenever it happens, I think more important than the beginning of the aggression, it is how to end it. And that's why I think we are seeing efforts from different sides on this issue. One of them is Strait of Hormuz, which Iran is trying to somehow use it as a leverage against the US and Israel and their allies, but in the meantime trying to prevent any kind of coalition against the country, which can be very important the day after.
All right. Earlier, the European Union Foreign Policy Chief, that's Kaja Kallas, has held a phone call with Iran's foreign minister, it seems, to discuss the Strait of Hormuz. There are some leaders that have been in direct talks with the Iranians to try and find a solution to this.
November's going to be here pretty quick, Jim. I don't know, man. Things aren't going to get better economically before then.
Well, it seems
and
that different parties
that's bad for the party in power.
Learn that,
and that's the Republicans.
If there is any kind of escalation in relation to the energy infrastructure as a result of
people
the
are not happy.
Strait of Hormuz,
Trump's approval is 40% at best.
Players, including those in the
it's
region
not good.
And beyond the region. Because in the case of any escalation, Sarah, it seems that Iran could open new fronts, like including Yemenis in terms of Bab el-Mandab or Suez Canal, and this can have repercussions for the global market, and this can have also consequences for other players in Europe or other parts of the world. In addition to that,
but are we though, Jim?
Action against energy architecture in Iran can result in Iran's retaliatory response against Israeli energy infrastructure, as well as the other ones in the whole region. But Iran has said that it will try to. Yes.
I just wanted to ask you on that particular point. I know that Iran says that it would retaliate, as it has done throughout the war. It's been more of a tit for tat. Once the US or Israel does something, it does respond.
Okay,
and it follows through
good, Jim. Good luck to you.
When it comes to the
Trump doesn't care about you. Trump doesn't care about the Republican Party. He's done. He's got a couple more years left, and he's out.
Companies that are related to
he's going to grift, keep making money, and then gone.
Israel. I mean, define that.
Well, that's why
Thanks, Robert. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
We do not have any winner in this game. That will be a lose-lose game for all the players in the region and beyond the region, including for the United States itself. That's why Iran is trying to use this as a tool of deterrence in order to stop the United States from attacking its energy infrastructure. But according to Iranian sources, in the past they have been adopting an eye for an eye policy toward any escalation vis-a-vis Iran. But this time they're saying that this is not going to be proportionate, but they will try to use to adopt it in an asymmetric way, and in a way that it will be several times stronger than the blow they receive. So this is significant because Iran and the United States, both sides are trying in terms of establishing a new balance whereby they can use it as a deterrence against the other side. And that's why
You are
Iran
correct,
thought
Jim.
that
I agree.
proportion was not helpful. So they are going to somehow bring more escalation in order to establish that equation to stop the United States from engaging in more provocative actions that will bring more escalation to the story. And this time I think it could be very significant. That's we are seeing players from Europe, from region. They are trying to make sure that this does not happen. And I think we can be watching to see how the United States is practically will do in terms of in relation to this issue.
All right, yeah, of course, a lot of unknowns there. Thanks very much. That's Abbas Aslani in Tehran. Right, well, in the last hour, the Israeli military says that more missiles and rockets have been launched by Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon. These are the latest images of rockets.
Trump says they're obliterated. We've destroyed their military. Yet every day, more missiles, more drones.
Earlier, Israeli police said an Iranian missile struck a kindergarten in Rishon LeZion, that's south of Tel Aviv. Authorities added that the preschool was closed at the time and no casualties have been reported. Overnight on Saturday, 2 cities were struck in southern Israel, leaving extensive damage, and the incident has raised questions over Israel's air defense systems.
Yeah, they're running out of interceptors.
Even in successes, we
expensive interceptors.
Performance, from the detection to the interception, discover new things, do corrections, and adapt to the situation. The Air Force is managing a complex defensive battle. More than 90% of the launches fired at Israel are intercepted.
All right, let's go to Rog McBride live for us from the Jordanian capital. Well, of course, as we heard that they're going to investigate that.
Thanks, Davey. Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Have been launched from Iran to Israel, as we were saying.
And yeah, this is a war of choice from Trump.
Damage, especially because
we should not be there.
Potentially fail again, this system.
Yeah, this latest alert has actually now just been lifted. Again, it was in the north of Israel. People have been told they can leave their shelters. Once more, there have been no reports of damage or casualties. But it does follow a pattern we've seen throughout Sunday of a fairly intense level of attacks and also alarms being raised, which are especially prevalent in the north of the country because they're contending not only with incoming Iranian missiles, but also attacks from Hezbollah across the border north of Israel inside of Lebanon. But during a 6-hour period on Sunday in the north of Israel, they had 23 separate alerts. It does all add to this general feeling of war.
The only upside is that he's done in a couple of years. That's it, Data.
From the start of this war, that as soon as possible, the authorities, the government,
take Congress in November, try to slow him down, block some of what he wants to do.
Schools would be reopening by now. That doesn't seem to be happening. Also lifting restrictions on the numbers of people who can attend gatherings. That seems to have been put on hold. And we are now hearing, in fact, that
Putin's laughing all the way to the bank.
At increasing restrictions on the numbers of passengers on incoming and outgoing flights into Ben Gurion International Airport.
All right, and the Israeli army chief has said the operation against Hezbollah has only just begun. I mean, we're more than 3 weeks now into this conflict. How is the conflict in Lebanon being received by the Israeli public? Does it have the support?
Yeah, there is, despite the weariness, I think there is a sense that when it comes to Iran and also contending and facing off against Hezbollah in Lebanon, now is the time that they have to do it. This is the chance of a lifetime with the U.S. Showing so much support, the full weight of the U.S.
Well, good for you, Jim. But I mean, in 2024, you voted for lower prices on day one and no more wars. And Trump has screwed you on both.
Demolishing bridges that they say are being used by Hezbollah.
Have you seen the price of diesel? Prices in stores are guaranteed to go up.
Much bigger,
fertilizer,
as we move
everything.
Forward. And in turn, Hezbollah has been responding with attacks of their own. We've had confirmation from the Israeli military that in various attacks and incidents on Sunday, 7 Israeli soldiers were injured, some of them by a drone attack. But despite that, the senior military officials in Israel have been going on Israeli media saying that the attacks against Hezbollah will continue. They'll continue, they say,
right,
whatever
Davey?
happens with Iran. This seems to be a separate agenda that's particular and very specific to Israel, that they will continue whatever happens with Iran in conjunction with their U.S. allies. They'll continue these attacks into Lebanon itself.
Right,
And I was in the military in the 80s too.
Overnight in Iran
Early
and
80s.
They were certainly unique in the amount of destruction that we've seen since the war started. The Israeli government says it's investigating how those interceptors failed. What can you tell us about the defense system that Israel has?
I'm not defending the regime. The regime is horrible. Horrible. This isn't about them. This is about us and who we are as a people and who we are as a nation.
The strategic value of this is the home of Israel's nuclear program. So it is concerning. But I think the Israeli military authorities have been stressing the point that no matter how sophisticated your air defenses are, and they are very sophisticated.
You don't have to post it 20 times, though. I will block you.
Development, differing layers of defense, and they claim to be able to shoot down at least 90%.
Yeah, troops are on their way. We'll see what Trump does with them.
Their point is that despite all the precautions you take,
it's not that many.
Missiles will get through. Now, the Iranians have been exploiting this for all their worth, putting out all sorts of dreadful premonitions that the skies of Israel are now opened up. They've found ways of getting around Israel's defenses. That's seen in Israel as being simply an attempt to undermine morale and the resilience of the Israeli people. But the tactics do seem to be changing. They do seem to be using more cluster munitions that disperse over a larger area. They're harder to intercept, and also using.
Yeah, but don't forget, Davey, of those 2,500 or 5,000, those are not all fighting units. A lot of them are support units. In that 5,000, you've got, medical, you've got, logistics people. It's only a portion of that is actual fighters.
Now, on the ground in Lebanon, airstrikes on the south
Correct.
of the country.
So what's 2,500 or 5,000 going to do? Nothing.
Israeli forces have attacked the Qasmiya Bridge. That's a key crossing linking Lebanon south to the rest of the country. President Joseph Aoun has called the attack a prelude to ground invasion. Israeli forces said the bridges are being used by Hezbollah and that they need to be destroyed to prevent attacks on northern Israel. Well, Israel continues to pound cities across the south, causing significant damage.
Maybe, Jim, maybe. I like you too, buddy.
Pet reports from Tir in southern Lebanon.
Earlier this afternoon, we witnessed the Israeli military targeting with a large airstrike the bridge on the main highway between Tyre and the north of the country. So this is the main arterial road connecting this part of southern Lebanon to the rest of the country. Now, this afternoon, we heard the roar of the jets come overhead and a huge explosion. In the aftermath of that, it seems that the span of the bridge was not totally destroyed. There were 2 large holes in it. So then a couple of hours later, Israeli warplanes once again returned and they have made a second attack on this key bridge. Now, this bridge is not the only one that has been struck by Israel in the last week. In fact, a number of bridges over the Litani River have been targeted over the last little while, ranging from this one, which is right down by the sea, all the way towards the eastern part
Thank you, Jim.
of the Litani
Thank you.
River.
Appreciate that, man.
Bridges on smaller
You're
secondary
all right.
roads, but this one is a significant escalation. And what's also significant
Thank
about
you,
this
Davey.
targeting of
Appreciate
bridges
it.
is that it represents an expansion of the Israeli military campaign. They say that they're targeting Hezbollah, and previously the airstrikes and the ground operation and everything that has been claimed here in Lebanon, they say that they're taking out Hezbollah operatives, Hezbollah infrastructure, weapons dumps, things like this. These bridges and indeed the electricity substations that have also been targeted in recent days are civilian infrastructure that belongs to the Lebanese state, which is not a party to this conflict. In fact, the Lebanese state has signaled its intention to disarm Hezbollah. They have outlawed their military and security activities. Whether or not they're able to enforce that, it remains very much
Sometimes,
a question.
Lewis,
And certainly
sometimes.
since that decision was announced nearly 2 weeks ago now, we haven't seen any particular effort for that to happen. Now, human rights groups have been warning that this destruction, this targeting of civilian infrastructure may constitute a war crime. But this comes in the context of a number of airstrikes across southern Lebanon today, and also overnight there were strikes in the Bekaa Valley as this Israeli air campaign across the country continues.
All right, Ubaida Hito is live for us in Beirut. So, Ubaida, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun said Israel's attack on the bridge is a prelude to ground invasion. What's the latest, and why does the president think that?
Absolutely, a very strong condemnation from the Lebanese president, describing it as a kind of collective punishment. Now, from a humanitarian perspective, this is going to have huge implications for the Lebanese government. Breaking these bridges, the connection between the north and the south of the country is going to make it significantly more difficult for the Lebanese government to get humanitarian aid to people south of the Litani River. As you know, there's over 1 million people displaced in the country south of the Litani River. There still are civilians living in those areas, most of them in shelters.
Yes,
like
they do,
schools and
Davey.
hospitals
Yes,
and
they
other
do.
temporary shelters. But with these
They're worse.
bridges
Bibi's
broken,
worse than Trump.
it's going to be very difficult for the government to reach them. Also, the president mentioned that the international community should intervene and make sure that Israel doesn't use this issue of the presence of Hezbollah as a pretext to carry out this cleansing, if you will, of these southern areas. We heard from the Israeli Ministry of Defense today that they gave orders to destroy Rafah style all of the villages and towns on the border areas. So the president, rightfully so, is very concerned about this policy that the Ministry of Defense in Israel is pursuing now in the southern parts of Lebanon, calling this invasion illegal, making sure that this mass displacement doesn't turn also into a mass destruction of southern Lebanon. The situation continues to intensify in the south of the country. Dozens of airstrikes in different parts of the south of Lebanon, especially in the Khiyam region. There are intense battles going on between Hezbollah and the IDF.
Yep, me too.
Lebanese
Me too.
territory. There is also ongoing fighting in places like Naqoura, all the way in the western front near the Israeli border. And it looks like that the IDF has intentions to intensify its ground operation. And that's extremely concerning for the Lebanese government, as Heidi mentioned, who's trying to create distance between itself and the Hezbollah operations, which it says are illegal and should stop. But until that happens, it seems like Israel is intent on creating this sense of panic and mass destruction in southern Lebanon.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, as we can see there with those bridges, targeting civilian infrastructure, and that's the real concern, as you mentioned, a lot of people that have been displaced from their homes. But what about the situation where you are? Beirut has also been subject to massive attacks in some areas. People have been forced out of their homes, sleeping on the streets. Where are we with that in terms of them receiving aid? Where are they going? Can you just give us a sense of what's happening where you are?
Well, the government has opened over 600 temporary shelters around the country, but the number of people that have been displaced is over 1 million. It's a huge number of people. Every fourth person in Lebanon essentially is now an internally displaced refugee. And so this is a huge humanitarian crisis for the Lebanese government, which is already facing economic pressures inside the country. So they're having trouble responding to all of this. Even though things remain calm here in Beirut, the situation is definitely tense. In the areas behind me that are sort of dark, you can see here there's a whole section of the city. They call it the southern suburbs of Beirut. They're completely dark. And many of the streets here in Beirut are completely dark because people are afraid of the ongoing strikes. Even though things have been calm, relatively calm here in Beirut, a couple nights ago there were 2 strikes in the southern suburbs. There is always concern of more strikes because evacuation orders by Israel have forced hundreds of thousands of people out of this neighborhood, or out of these neighborhoods here in the southern suburbs for now more than 2 weeks. People don't know when they're going to go back home. As you mentioned, there are tens of thousands of people living in tents on the sides of the streets in temporary shelters, many of them here in Beirut because people think it's safer here. But how long is that going to last? How long is it going to be before Israel carries out those kinds of strikes here in the southern suburbs or in other parts of northern Lebanon is unclear. And this is why people are definitely feeling very nervous about what the coming days are going to look like.
Yeah, thanks very much. That's the latest update from Lebanon. Obaida Hito there, thank you. Well, as Obaida was saying, the violence has displaced more than 1 million Lebanese, and some are living with family or friends or even in hotels, government shelters and on the streets. And while the country remains deeply sectarian, many people have found
humanitarian crisis everywhere you look now.
Communities. As Bernard Smith reports from Jazin.
Nothing's ever going to change.
Lebanon.
Churches are often seen as places of refuge, but in deeply sectarian Lebanon, a church offering shelter to Shia Muslim families is unusual.
Yeah, and that's weird, right? No
When they saw
pots?
people fleeing with nowhere to go, they had to do something. It's the first time in any conflict the monastery has opened its doors like this.
Political parties and divisions have split the sects, with each group taking its own side. Even we as a monastery were criticized by some people who questioned how we could host people who might be one day against us. But for us, the priority remains the human being.
St. Peter and Paul's monastery in southern Lebanon is sheltered from the fighting by the hills that surround it. But this is what people are escaping, just a 30-minute drive away. Towns and villages bombarded by Israeli airstrikes targeting Hezbollah positions.
We woke up to the sound of strikes. We were asleep. The first strike hit our village at around 2 a.m. We waited until we realized there was a war. Then we left. We spent the whole day on the road.
We hope to live in Lebanon hand in hand, without sectarianism, without political divisions. We hope to return to our villages soon for the war to end and for Lebanon to change for the better.
There are 18 religious sects recognized in Lebanon: Christian, Muslim and Jewish.
I'm Christian and she's Muslim. We live together here and we cook together and we are all family.
Because Lebanon's state is so weak, people rely on their sects for jobs, for social welfare, for education, and that perpetuates division. This sort of cross-sect engagement is unusual, if welcome. St. Peter and Paul's is the only church sheltering Shia Muslims in this part of Lebanon, though there are some others in Beirut as well as Sunni Muslim mosques. They are the exceptions rather than the rule. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera, Jazin, southern Lebanon.
You're watching Al Jazeera, and here's a reminder of our top stories this hour. Iran has rebuffed the US's threat to bomb its power plants if it doesn't reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
Shit, I've been talking to you, Jim, and my mic was muted.
It's vowed to
Stable
block the
genius.
strait indefinitely and strike back against energy and desalination facilities in the region if attacked.
I agree with you, Joe. I hope Trump doesn't do it. I don't want to see
Israeli
American
military
kids
says
coming
more
home in
missiles
body
and
bags.
rockets have been launched at the country, both from Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon. These are some of the latest images from northern Israel. Earlier, police said an Iranian missile struck a closed kindergarten south of Tel Aviv. Israeli airstrikes have targeted the Qasmiya Bridge in southern Lebanon across the Litani River. Israel says they're being used by Hezbollah. Separate Israeli airstrikes on Sunday have killed at least 4 people and injured 7 others. Now, sirens have been activated in Bahrain a short while ago. The kingdom has come under near-daily Iranian attacks since the war began. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and the United Arab Emirates have all reported interceptions of drones and missiles on Sunday. Now, this comes as the Secretary General, that's of the Gulf Cooperation Council, renewed his condemnation of Iranian attacks on GCC member states. He said the GCC reserves the right under international law to take necessary measures to protect their security.
Couldn't even imagine, Joe.
Let's go to
I couldn't
Malik
even
Traynor,
imagine.
who's live for us in Kuwait City. Malik, so, every day we have...
All right, I'm muting the feed for a second. Trump gave an interview with Israel's Channel 13 today, and he was asked about his recent ultimatum against Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. He says, you're going to find out what's going to happen. You're going to find out soon. It's going to be very good. Total decimation of Iran. That's what Trump is claiming today to Israeli media. Total decimation of Iran. This war is not authorized. And it would be horrible if it was authorized for him to say something like this. And the fact that it's not authorized makes it even worse. Sorry.
5 drones in Saudi Arabia just in the last 2 hours. They said they intercepted 7 drones in the eastern area. That's where, a majority of their oil facilities are in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
I hope to stay safe, Jim.
Look, I think, everywhere today here in Kuwait, people are talking about this escalation of threats from President Trump, saying that he's going to target power plants in Iran and that Iran's going to retaliate by hitting, U.S. interests, power plants, civilian infrastructure, desalination plants. And people here take those threats seriously because, earlier this week when Israel targeted the South Pars oil field in Iran, we saw consequences here in the Gulf. Oil facilities have been targeted numerous times across the Gulf, just to name a few. You have the Yanbu oil facility in Saudi Arabia, the Ras Laffan in Qatar, the Fujairah port in Abu Dhabi, the Salalah port in Oman, and in the last 3 days...
He does have 60 days.
Port,
that is true.
30 kilometers from where I'm standing, was hit twice. So, I mean, these threats are taken really seriously here. People here are talking about and worried about, what if the U.S. goes through, that possibly power plants could be hit here. People are talking about possibly buying generators, possibly buying batteries to sustain electricity in their homes, and desalination plants. I mean, people here depend on those plants for water. The Az-Zur water plant here in Kuwait is one of the largest in the Middle East.
This is going to get way out of hand very quickly.
So,
very quickly.
These threats, people here across the region are really worried about this recent escalation.
Yeah, definitely. Many people on tenterhooks there. Thank you very much, Malik Traynor. Now, Iraqi authorities say 3 airstrikes have targeted an Iranian-aligned armed group in its stronghold south of Baghdad. The group
No,
is
it is not a good time to join the service.
Called Hashad al-Sha'bi, also known as the Popular Mobilization Forces. Iraqi officials say the strikes came after an attack targeted a U.S. diplomatic and logistics center at Baghdad International Airport. Well, we have Nicholas Huck, our reporter, live.
Thank God my kids are too old. Nobody wants them now.
As I was just saying to Malik, daily attacks across the GCC,
and my granddaughter's like this big, so
in Iraq.
They don't want her either yet.
That's right, daily attacks here. In the last 24 hours, there's been dozens of attacks, specifically on the American Victoria base. But just before we get on with that, one of the militia groups that are part of the movement that you were talking about, this Iran-backed militia group called Katib Hezbollah, has released a statement giving an ultimatum to the Americans to leave the American embassy in the next 5 days, or else they'll resume attacks on the American embassy. Remember, Sarah, a couple of days ago, the embassy came under attack. And this announcement was made just hours after the U.S. air defense systems, CRAM, were activated at the Victoria base. That's just 20
because the
kilometers
leadership in the White House is out of its mind.
And this is happening
out of its mind,
at a
Joe.
time, according to Iraqi sources, that the base is being evacuated. Now, NATO forces
Why are we doing
a few
this?
days ago announced
To
their
distract from the
withdrawal,
Epstein
but that's
files?
ongoing. It's happening over the weekend, where we saw Iraqi counterterrorism forces escorting NATO soldiers
Is
out
it, Jim?
of the country, literally
Interesting.
taking them out from Baghdad to Amman. Now, American forces have taken a plane to leave, but this is an ongoing evacuation of this military base, and it continues
Sorry, Joe.
to come under attack from Iran-backed militia groups here in Iraq. And effectively, we've heard from one Iraqi security source that told us that
Is he,
there were
Elaine?
several Iraqi counter-terrorism soldiers that were injured following these drones attacks. So there's no sign of letting of these attacks. And you can really see how this conflict is escalating and here in Iraq. And Teresa mentioned how this war is
possible,
affecting
Jim. Who
the
knows?
wallets of Americans. But here it's affecting
There's always
people's
kids out
life,
there that
people's sense
have
of
nowhere else to
security.
go and
Earlier today,
figure what the hell, right?
Iraqi Prime
I mean,
Minister visited the site of the Iraqi
they're always going to end up with
intelligence,
recruits.
Headquarters that came also under attack yesterday, just to see how the situation was going. And he said that was a cowardly act. He went there to give a sense of unity.
Robert,
at
some
a
of
time where
the reporting is
Iraqis
now
feel
saying that
under pressure
Rupert
from this
Murdoch
war.
helped push Trump into
Been
this.
through a lot already, Iraqis
Don't know if
have.
it's
So
true.
thanks very much, Nicholas Huck there from Baghdad. Now, countries across the world are cutting fuel use as the conflict in the Middle East impacts supplies. Slovenia has limited fuel purchases. Gas stations across the country displayed signs limiting fuel to 30 to 50 litres a day. That's for private
Trump hates
vehicles.
EVs
Long queues
and
were seen
windmills
outside the
and
fuel
anything that
stations
isn't
that are
oil
open.
related
Prime Minister
that his
Robert
buddies can make money
Golob
on.
is assuring the country there is enough fuel and that the army is assisting to transport it.
For me, this is new. I didn't think it would happen so quickly, that it would be linked so quickly to the events taking place in Iran.
I'll be right back, guys. I'm going to go say hello to my granddaughter.
Reserve, and it's going to
1
go
minute.
down very fast, and we might run out of fuel rather quickly.
Of course, it's not okay. We have two different cars, so we will have to now be careful which one to take. But the problem is because we go to different cities that we will have to discuss what's the priority. So for the future, this will be really, really bad.
Anna Maria Jalamakovic is a lead energy analyst for Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis, and she says the war's impact on energy markets is completely dependent on how long it lasts.
We have said from the beginning that the difficulty will be to understand how long will this war take to find a solution. So the escalation and the length of the war is adding to the pressure on the gas market and the oil market. And we have to think that around 20% of the LNG in the world is disrupted, and around 25% of the oil and oil products. So this is affecting the whole global oil and gas market. And the longer it takes, the more difficult it is to find a stabilization in the market, and we could see some demand destruction. I was analyzing yesterday and discussing with some colleagues on Friday that what I understand is that we have been seeing like red flag signals on the gas market, for example, in Europe, yeah? And sometimes we ignore them. You know, we are, as you said, we are getting so used to that we ignore all these red flags that are coming. We had a big situation in Europe 4 years ago. The gas market was in crisis. We found ways to kind of support a little bit the crisis, and that was reducing gas consumption. Renewables have been playing a vital role here, because what we have seen in the oil and gas market is that there's a lot of volatility. There's constant, any war, even any weather situation.
I'm back. Ta-da.
Also disrupt the gas and oil market. For example, we have seen the Strait of the Panama Canal, for example.
Trump's a raging narcissist, Joe.
So there are others.
Everything Trump does is for the benefit of Trump. That's it.
It's very worrying.
He doesn't care about us. He doesn't care about the Iranian people, the Cuban people. All he cares about is his grift and making money for himself. That's it. Where's he today?
Iran has has
golfing.
denied targeting a joint British
Thousands of
military
people are
base
dying in a
Indian
war
Ocean.
he
The attack
caused,
was first
and he's
reported on
golfing.
Saturday when the
Give me a
UK
break.
issued a statement condemning the attack and calling it unsuccessful. And despite Tehran's denial, Israel says the attack highlights Iran's ability to strike well beyond the Middle East. Juliet Ager takes a look.
Iran is being accused of attempting to carry out its longest-range missile attack to date, targeting Diego Garcia, a joint US-UK military base in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Iran has denied responsibility, and it's still unclear where the strikes originated. The island is located about 4,000 kilometers from Iran. The UK says the attack was unsuccessful, but it's raising questions of how far Iran's missiles can reach. If Iran is trying to strike targets so far away, could it also have the capability to hit sites as far away as Western Europe and beyond? The US has several military assets
Point taken,
that
Joe.
could fall within that potential range, including arguably the most
It's all
crucial,
good, Jim.
the Ramstein Air Base in Germany, a key NATO installation. Iran has several weapons within its arsenal with a longer range. That includes the Khorramshahr and Sejil ballistic missiles, along with the Sumar cruise missile with an estimated range of between 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers. Destroying Iran's ballistic missile capabilities is a shared goal between the US and Israel. But it's difficult to determine how much of its capacity has been degraded since the war began.
A funeral has been held here in Doha for 7 people who
Trump
died
says
in a
their
military
military is
helicopter
completely
crash.
destroyed.
The victims
So,
included 4 Qatari
completely
armed
obliterated.
forces members, a Turkish soldier, and personnel from a Turkish defense company. The Emir of Qatar attended the ceremony at Doha's Grand Mosque, and an investigation is underway into the cause of the crash. Both Qatar and Turkey said they believe it was caused by a technical malfunction. Right, let's take a look at some of the other news. Leftist candidates.
He's in Mar-a-Lago. You can look it up, David. There's a daily schedule from Roll Call that tells you exactly what Trump has going on every day. And every weekend, he's in Florida golfing. Every weekend.
Benoit Payan defeated his far-right rival, Frank Alisio. These polls are being seen as a litmus test for next year's presidential elections.
Today, Paris has chosen to remain true to its history. A huge thank you to the women and men of Paris who, wherever they may come from, chose to unite the left and the Greens in the second round. Tonight, this victory represents a promise, a demanding one. It is the triumph of a
100%
certain
correct,
vision
Joe.
of Paris,
100%.
a vibrant, progressive Paris. For the people, a Paris for everyone.
Natasha Butler reports from Paris.
Well, it was a good night for left. It was also a good night for the Conservative Party, even though their candidate was defeated here in Paris. Rachida Dati conceding defeat, as you say, to Emmanuel Grégoire, the socialist politician who won very comfortably here in Paris ahead of Dati. Now, Emmanuel Grégoire knows this building where we're standing very well because he was actually the deputy mayor of Paris to Anne Hidalgo, who just walked through this room actually celebrating the fact that Grégoire will be the
Bye,
mayor
Jim. Thanks
of
for
the
stopping
city.
by, man.
Elsewhere
Thanks
in
for the
France,
like
of
and
course,
subscribe.
we've
I
seen a
appreciate
really
it.
mixed picture.
Have a good night.
Far-right party of Marine Le Pen, the National Rally.
Enjoy
They
your
were
kid and
hoping
grandkids.
to win Marseille, France's second city. It was a neck-and-neck race up to the finish line, but in the end,
I'm
it
here
did
every
fall,
weekend,
to
Jim.
the incumbent,
Friday, Saturday,
Benoit
Sunday.
Payan, a left-wing politician, a socialist
I do these long
politician
ones.
who managed to retain his seat in Marseille. Conservatives, as I said, have won several seats as well. So what we really do see is a very fragmented political picture here in France. The far left, the hard left party of Jean-Luc Mélenchon, France Unbowed, they managed to take 2
Joe, I was a
quite
registered
big cities
Republican
in
for
France, Roubaix
30
and
years.
Saint-Denis. So they'll
Going
certainly
all the
be
way
very
back to Newt
pleased
Gingrich and the
about that.
contract with America. I voted for Bob
Palestinians were
Dole,
killed
Rick
after an Israeli
Santorum a couple
airstrike
times.
targeted the Nusayrat refugee camp
I'm
in central
currently a
Gaza.
registered
In a separate
independent.
strike on Sunday,
I'm
3
not.
others were
I was
injured
never a
in an
registered
attack on a
Democrat.
residential
I have
building
more
in Gaza
left-leaning
City.
views nowadays
Israel
as
has
I get a little bit
continued to
older and a
bomb
little bit
Gaza. That's
wiser. But
despite a US
yeah,
broken
I'm
ceasefire
old
back in
school
October.
Republican,
More than
and the
600
Trump Republican
Palestinians
Party
have been
is
killed
not
since then.
that Republican Party. Not
For
even
years,
close.
displaced families in southeastern Niger have relied on humanitarian aid to survive. With charities now suspending their work, many say they've been left without food, jobs, or even support. Victoria Gaterby reports.
Diffa in southeastern Niger is already dealing with the fallout from armed groups operating in the region, along with widespread poverty. Now displaced people are
Thank
facing
you.
even greater
Appreciate that.
uncertainty
I'm trying.
because the charities they depend on have suspended their services. Hajia Balki is preparing a meal for her children with the little flour she has left. She's been here for nearly a decade after fleeing violence between the Nigerian army and the armed group Boko Haram.
We were not happy when some NGOs stopped their activities. Many families can no longer find enough food to eat. My most urgent need is food for my children.
The suspensions are part of a government effort to audit humanitarian aid funding and enforce new regulations. But
Thank
on
you
the
very
ground,
much.
the
I
immediate
appreciate the
impact has been the loss of
subscribe,
vital
man.
support.
Thank you.
We have lost a very important partner. For example, USAID supported projects promoting women's leadership and peace building in Diffa.
The closures are also affecting those who relied on relief programs for work.
What the state has decided, we as citizens obey. I used to have a construction company funded by NGOs. But when they stop working, an entire chain of people is affected. Now I'm unemployed and I have children to support.
Diffa is in the Lake Chad region where years of conflict have forced people from their homes. Many are from Borno State in northeastern Nigeria. Diffa hosts around 175,000 displaced people and more than 120,000 refugees. There are also around 36,000 people who've returned after fleeing earlier violence, often because they have few other options. With insecurity in Diffa already high and the needs of displaced families growing, there are fears the crisis could deepen in the weeks ahead. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera.
Cuba has restored power to nearly half of the capital, Havana, less than 24 hours after the national grid collapsed for the second time in a week. The country's aging energy grid is under growing strain because of a US-imposed oil blockade. The blackouts have left many struggling to get basic supplies, including food and water.
Another country Trump is trying to starve out.
Arriving as part of a global effort to bring aid to the struggling island, as our Latin American editor, Lucia Newman, reports from the Cuban capital.
I'm in Old Havana. You can see people are strolling around. It's a Saturday night here. They're spending the evening here with their friends as though nothing has happened, but we're actually in the middle of yet another nationwide blackout. It's completely dark out here except for a couple of lights from hotels that have generators. This is the second time in less than a week that the power has gone out all over the country. The government says that it's trying to get it back on again. Nobody knows how long that will
Thanks,
take.
Joe. Yeah,
So
you
that
tell
means
them.
most of these
Hit that
people
like
will
button,
spend the
people.
night in the
Like and
darkness.
subscribe. Let's
Thank
go.
goodness it's not in the middle of summer yet. It's not so hot, so they might be able to sleep in their apartments. But people are fed up with this. It means that they can't get water. The water pipes don't work. It means that their food begins to rot in their refrigerators. It's happening more and more. And one of the reasons, of course, is not just because the power system in this country, which runs on oil, is decrepit, it's old, it needs repairs, but also because President Donald Trump has imposed a total fuel blockade around Cuba, hoping that it will collapse, bringing it at least to the brink of collapse. But there has been at least one, you could say, optimistic note throughout the day today, and that was at a hospital which has been running out of medicine. A group of activists from Puerto Rico arrive at the Salvador Allende Hospital in Havana, bringing gifts in the form of badly needed medical supplies. They say they brought what they could in suitcases. The donations include needles for injecting insulin, the insulin itself, antibiotics, prednisona for acute allergies, medicine for asthma as well, which this country has almost run out of. It is a heartwarming donation, there's no doubt about that. But no one has any illusion that this will do more than just make a tiny dent in the acute crisis this country is having in its health system. Since the Trump administration imposed a total fuel blockade on Cuba more than 3 months ago, an already dire economic situation has become desperate.
Trump's a great humanitarian, isn't he?
Jeremy Corbyn is also here to say
Once again,
Cuba is
I'm no
not
fan
alone.
of the Cuban regime, but this isn't about them. It's about us and who we are as a people. I mean, my God, this is Trump's solution? Starve these people out? Come on.
I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think the rest of the world will allow it.
Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel invited them to Havana's Convention Palace to thank them for their solidarity. But he also assured them that Cuba is preparing to defend itself against a possible U.S.
Really?
attack.
How's life in Puerto Rico, Joe? You like it down there?
When the U.S. invaded Venezuela using powerful bombs and state-of-the-art technology to kidnap President Maduro, they thought it would be simple. But 32 Cuban combatants defended him and fought to the death. What wouldn't millions of Cubans do to defend this country?
Yeah. I think that's off the table now, Joe.
He's referring to President Trump's repeated threat to, quote, take over Cuba
Fucking
as
lunatic.
soon as he's finished with Iran.
Look at this orange mess.
It's uncertain how all this will play out, as Cuba's government continues offering what it calls a serious and responsible dialogue with the White House to resolve their differences. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Havana.
A strike on a hospital in Sudan's East Darfur state has killed at least 64 people and destroyed part of the facility. The World Health Organization says the Al Dain teaching hospital was targeted on Friday. It's not yet clear who carried out the strike. Government forces and the paramilitary RSF.
What's the infrastructure like down there, Joe? Like, how's your internet, your electric and all that? Everything pretty stable down there?
Brought two buildings down.
I'm talking to you like it's a third world country. I don't know.
In the central Fateh district, which is home to
Hello,
historic
everyone.
sites like the Blue Mosque and Hagia Sophia. Emergency crews have been pulling people out of the debris. Officials say all of those trapped have now been rescued. When Cyclone Ditwa swept through Sri Lanka in November, it damaged tens of thousands of official documents. 4 months later, though, teams are still trying to salvage everything from birth certificates to land deeds. Manel Fernandez has this report from Colombo.
Restorers at Sri Lanka's National Archives are racing against time. They're trying to save tens of thousands of official documents damaged during Cyclone Ditwa late last year.
The pages are stuck to each other. We
I
are
don't know,
separating
Joe.
them and inserting sheets of paper between the pages to absorb the water.
Wait, that's not the same Kennedy that the Kennedy Center is named after, right? Because if we're getting rid of the Kennedy Center, we can get rid of treaties with Kennedy's name on it. It's all good.
More than 15,000 active case files and 160,000 finalized case records were soaked. Judges, court staff and the military worked hard to clean the files before freezing them, the best way to stop mold from setting in. The Babelagamas file is one of them.
Cool.
The government acquired the couple's property in Galagithara in central Sri Lanka as part of a highway project in 2017. After almost a decade, court proceedings were near completion, and part
Good to know.
payment of compensation
Just
had been
cheaper?
approved.
Nice and cheap down there for
Everything is
you?
on hold until the original documents are available.
The case took so many years, and just when it's about to finish, there's more delay. We have been stuck in limbo, unable to finish building or buy a new property and move out, and now this.
Restoration is a slow and painstaking process. There are also dangers.
Documents damaged by floodwaters can be full of microbes like mold, which can't be seen. This can get into your body and make you sick, so there's a big risk when working.
Yeah, I
on
know
these
they're a
files.
Commonwealth.
The team says
The
it's
Democrats would
determined
like to make them a
salvage
state.
as much as possible.
Republicans
Many
don't want
people's
that.
lives are on hold as restorers work to save thousands of active court files, including land disputes, divorce and custody cases. Authorities say the disaster has highlighted the urgent need to conserve official documents. The United Nations and donors are helping with the challenging task.
I believe that this will set a stage for us to work more closely with public authorities in ensuring that they have a proper records management system, a disaster risk management system to deal with crises in the future.
The complex operation will likely take a long time to be completed, leaving those with active cases, like the Babelagamas, no choice but to wait and hope. Vinay Fernandez, Al Jazeera, Colombo.
All right, well, we're going to take a very short break. Do stay with us because the news continues.
All right, guys, I have to mute the music at the top of the hour so I don't get a copyright infringement thingy. So don't forget to like and subscribe, please. Thank you all for joining tonight. I'll be around for at least another hour or two. Really? That's interesting, Joe. Huh. Wild. Come on with the music. All right, here we go. Sorry about that, guys.
Hello, I'm Sarah Khairat and this is Al Jazeera with our continuing coverage of the conflict between the US, Israel and Iran. Coming up, Iran says it will completely shut the Strait of Hormuz if the US attacks its power plants. And Tehran says that if that happens,
I wonder why the Democrats down there don't want to be a state.
Interests in the region would be legitimate targets. Israel's prime minister pledges to, quote, destroy Iran after missile strikes injured more than 180 people. And Israel blows up bridges in southern Lebanon as it steps up its assault against Hezbollah. There are threats of further escalation in a high-stakes standoff between the US and Iran over the Strait of Hormuz. That's a key waterway that Tehran has been blocking for weeks. President Donald Trump issued an ultimatum on Saturday saying the US will, he said, obliterate Iran's power plants if it doesn't open the strait within 24 hours. Now, Iran says the strait isn't closed, but only
Way to de-escalate,
those that are
Don.
deemed as enemy ships are
All he
blocked
does is
from
make
passing
things
through,
worse.
and it's also vowed a
Insane.
swift retaliation should
Like
Trump
and
make
subscribe,
good
everyone.
on his threat.
In reiteration of our previous warning, if any fuel or energy facilities in Iran are targeted, we will respond by targeting energy and technology institutions and desalination plants linked to America and the Zionist entity in the region.
Trump's going to blow up the whole
US
fucking
and
world.
Israeli airstrikes are pounding communities across Iran. The Iranian
All because
Red
he's a
Crescent shared
PDF.
these images that you're seeing there from the northwestern city of
Oh, well.
Tabriz. US-Israeli strikes have killed more than 1,400
Be right
people
back.
across the country. Ali Hashim reports from the capital, Tehran.
It's clear that the tone is confrontational and it's multi-layered when it comes to the different authorities and sectors within the state, military, diplomacy, politicians. So they're all within one framework, which is retaliating to American interests in the region and Israel when it comes to the targeting of Iran's power plants. This is what we heard from the military and their spokesperson, who actually posted a map.
Cheers, Joe.
showing,
Cheers, everyone.
Several power plants
Happy Sunday.
And,
It is Sunday, right?
facilities across the Gulf and in Israel. Also, we heard from them saying that the Strait of Hormuz will continue to be closed till these power plants are repaired. The Speaker of the Parliament, Mohammed Bakr Qalibaf, a very influential politician and someone who is believed to be in the war room right now, also said that
Thanks,
this is
Magic
going
Man.
to lead
Appreciate it.
to retaliation, and later on he
Kamala
tweeted once again
2028.
saying that,
We already
this
tried
is
that.
going to also lead to retaliation.
This
towards
country's too
American
sexist and too
financial,
racist.
Companies and
So it's not going to
whoever
work.
works with them.
You need a
The
bland
foreign
white guy,
ministry, as you just read,
unfortunately. Just somebody much, much younger.
That the strait isn't closed actually, but it's the insurance companies
Hello, Jeff.
who are
Thanks for joining, man.
hesitating because they fear the war of choice, as he said, and this strait is open to the friends of Iran. They are exploiting the leverage they have on the Hormuz Strait.
Yeah, but Magic Man, he's going to pound them into submission. He's been saying for days the war's over, they're obliterated, we've destroyed all their targets, blah blah blah. They got no military left, and yet they're still fighting.
Another choke point.
So, but now he's going to pound them into submission. Got
it. Crisis. So this is what they are relying on right now. Plus the retaliation that they are vowing to do in case they are attacked in their power plants. So Iran is trying its best during this war to raise the price, put more pain on other parties in order to pressure the United States to stop this war.
All right, well, we have correspondents across the globe in Baghdad, Amman, Beirut, and also in Washington, D.C., and that's where Teresa Bow is live for us from there. Teresa, we're almost halfway through that deadline that Trump is self-imposing on Iran, and it seems his original plan to escort ships through the Hormuz sort of has gone away now, but now he's saying he'll obliterate Iran's energy or else.
How about Giant Meteor 2028?
Well, yes, and those are the messages that we've been seeing from the president, changing messages on social media. On Saturday, he said that he was going to obliterate power plants in Iran if it did not open the Strait of Hormuz. But on Friday, he has said it was time to start winding down. So certainly lots of mixed messages. But what is certain right now is that for the U.S. government, it is a priority to open up the Strait of Hormuz. It's not clear how. We've seen in the past week how Trump started pressuring European leaders mostly to help or create a coalition to open up the strait. Initially, that did not happen. The European Union has resisted in getting involved in this war, saying that mostly it's not its war. It's a war that
I like
did
Mark
not
Kelly.
start
Seems like an honorable man.
However,
a
last
good
Thursday,
man.
we saw a communique from members of the European Union and Japan also saying
And
that
Trump
it's
hates
time
him,
to start
so
thinking and planning
it's always
to
a
how
plus.
to open up the strait. Also, there was a conversation this Sunday between the U.S. president and the UK, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, about the necessity to open the strait. So what's to do now? What is the U.S. government? And that's the big question. Iran has been using mines along the strait and also small boats attacking the vessels that belong to countries that are involved in any type or any way or are allies of those who are attacking Iran right now. So it's finding a way. What we do know is that the United States is increasing its military presence in the Middle East, sending 3 warships with 2,500
Trump thinks he controls everything.
Marines. They're from a
Sunshine.
very specific unit. It's
He's an
called the 11th
egomaniac.
Expeditionary Marine Unit that is involved in ground operations, high-risk operations at sea, among others. And there's
When
some
Democrats have
speculation that it
control
would
of
take
everything.
part in this type of attacks on the Iranian coast. But of course, this is not certain. But what is certain is that opening the strait has become a priority, not just for the Trump administration, but also for the European Union. They say that the priority right now is to de-escalate the current war in order to be able to go in and find a solution. But that's something that until now, the Trump administration has not considered.
All right, and stay with us there, Teresa, because the U.S. Treasury Secretary has defended the decision to lift sanctions on stranded Iranian
Scott
oil at sea
Bessent,
for 30
just a
days.
humble soybean
Scott
farmer.
Bessent says it will allow Washington to limit Iran's oil profits.
About 140 million barrels are out on the water. In essence, we are jujitsuing the Iranians. We're using
They're not doing
their
anything
own
right now,
oil
Sunshine.
against them. We have a much better
Republicans
line
aren't
of
going to
sight,
impeach
be
him.
clear, at Treasury when this oil goes to, if it goes to Indonesia, if it goes to Japan, if it goes to Korea, we have a much better line of sight and are able to block accounts that the oil goes into.
So Theresa, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, defending that decision to lift sanctions on Iran's oil. But is that likely to reassure Americans, do you think?
Well, that's a big question. And for now, they're not seeing any type of reactions on the street, not just about this latest measure, but the U.S. government has been taking other measures to try to bring down the price of oil, for example, using strategic reserves, also waiving some sanctions on Russian oils, among others. And right now, people
get rid of sanctions on Putin. That's a good idea too.
Oil that has increased at least $1 just since this war started, and this is a huge concern, not just for because of the price of gas, possibility of more inflation, small businesses that depend on the price.
Trump
of oil,
hates him.
among so many other things, and
there's
that's
your
why
plus.
the government is trying to find immediate
he's another
solution,
bland white guy. He's young, he's smart, he's good looking.
30 days, 50 days,
he'd hammer Vance or whoever the Republicans put up, Rubio in 28. Newsom could be president. I think he'd be all right. I'm not in love with him, but he'd be all right.
And for the U.S. administration right now, bringing down the price of oil is political. I mean, there's midterm elections later this year. People here, when you talk to them, they say they are concerned about the war. They believe that bringing down the price of oil should be a priority for the current administration.
Yeah, I agree, Jeff.
That is something that will also
oil going to China. They're letting through.
They will vote in the upcoming elections, the midterm elections later this year.
All right, thanks for that update. That's Theresa Bow from Washington, D.C. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the Iranian response to U.S. pressure over the flow of oil has been one of defiance. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says the Strait of Hormuz is not closed, but ships hesitate because insurers fear the war of choice the United States initiated, not Iran.
I'd vote for your Chihuahua.
He insists that freedom of navigation cannot exist without
I'd vote for a bag of broken glass and full-blown AIDS over Trump.
And joining us for more on this from Tehran is Abbas Aslani. Back again, thank you very much. A senior research fellow at the Center for Middle East Strategic Studies. So when we hear from Theresa there, looking forward, really, we have another day or so from when this Trump threat is supposed to end. How do you think Iran is taking that threat right now?
Joe's Chihuahua 2028, folks. Let's make it happen.
Taking that seriously, but we are seeing no sign of, let's say, surrender or, let's say, weakness from the Iranian side. And on the contrary, what they are exhibiting is a shift in their operational posture. Iran is trying to not just fight for its survival, but also to turn this immediate threat into a long-term, let's say, strategic opportunity. So that's why it's unlikely for Tehran, in order to capitulate toward that ultimatum from American president. And some are saying that if it takes, Iran should pay the cost in case that the United States attacks part of the energy infrastructure in the country, in order to continue this fight till the moment that it's
I'm a
able
sick freak, and I am in love with the mullahs.
Equation whereby its long-term security interests are guaranteed. What it means that Iran not only wants to stop this ongoing aggression, but also to make sure that there will be no further attacks in future. So that's why, any step back at the moment from Iranian side,
scrappy for president,
as a sign of weakness from.
Do you have a running mate, Joe?
Many here in Tehran, and the United States will come 10 steps ahead. So that's why Iran thinks that it should not, given to the ultimatum from the American president, and this might be, somehow signaling that there might be a new level of escalation as we speak, or the days to come, and this might also open new fronts in the ongoing war.
Yeah, and speaking on new fronts, in a message on Sunday, commander of Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, of course that's Iran's highest operational command, one of the majors announced a shift in the country's military strategy from a defensive posturing to an offensive one. How so?
I'm in love with the place. I'm in love with Iran
this
as a place.
That Iran is not just in the reactive mode, but wants to be, take actions which somehow could change the course of the conflict. It is part of a multi-layered,
We can't have another
battle,
hold,
which is not
Joe.
limited to the
Come
military
on.
field, but also the economic aspect as
I
well.
mean, 12's not that old, right?
Iran
He still gets around
has
all
been
right.
adopting an let's say eye for an eye policies so far, but it thinks that this has not been that much, let's say, it has been effective to the extent, but in order to make it more effective, the country and the sources these days are saying that this time, if the infrastructure is targeted by the United States or Israel, they will try to somehow go beyond proportionate response and trying to somehow retaliate in stronger, let's say, intensity. This is aimed at, let's say, changing the calculus in the American side, and
Well, do you have a cat, Joe?
somehow make sure that the U.S. understands that if it takes any new escalatory move, the cost will be heavier this time. And the aim of this, let's say, change from the defensive mode to the
Medical
offensive
prescription
mode aims to somehow
discounts?
change this course of
You mean
action.
Trump
Many are
RX?
saying that if Iran just is engaged in
Just use good
defending,
RX, man.
this will be
You get
the
a better
same,
deal.
and this will
This is
be
another
somehow
Trump
a
scam.
Lebanon-style model that for now and then they will come and attack the country.
There you
In
go,
order
sunshine.
to stop this cycle, they think that something needs to change, and that is Iran's, let's say, operational posture, which somehow it needs to be more offensive.
All right, thank you very much. That's Abbas Aslani in Tehran. Now, Israel is under another round of overnight Iranian missiles attacks. People are seeing scenes like this across
How
the
are they being
country.
attacked?
That's
By
the
what?
scenes there that they're
By what?
seeing.
Somebody
Interception
explain
efforts
this
are
to me.
underway.
How
Warning
can they be
shrapnel
under
has
a
been
missile
reported in
attack?
several locations
By whom?
across southern and central
Trump says
Israel.
we've
Some
obliterated their
communities have
military.
reported fires and damage. Well, earlier Israeli police said an
I mean,
Iranian
is Trump
missile
lying?
struck a kindergarten in Rishon LeZion, that's south of Tel Aviv, and it was closed at the time with no injuries. Overnight, though, on Saturday,
I have two
strikes
cats.
on two cities
I like them,
in
but they're a
southern
pain in the
Israel
ass.
caused extensive damage. The incidents have raised questions over Israel's air defense systems.
In
Yeah,
every event,
it is a
even
war
in
crime.
successes, we investigate the entire chain of performance, from the detection to the
And how does it
interception,
help?
discover new things, do
You're just going to
corrections,
make the
and
regime
adapt to the
dig in even
situation.
more.
The
They're
Air
not going to
Force is
just
managing a
surrender.
complex defensive battle.
They're-
More than 90%
they're past
of
that
the
point
launches
already.
fired at Israel are
They
intercepted.
surrender, they're
Let's
dead.
go to Rog McBride live
So they
for us
might as
from
well
the
go out
Jordanian
fighting.
capital, Amman.
That's probably the
so we know
thinking.
there's been multiple shrapnel falling in different areas. Is there any damage at all?
Yeah, there have been reports that Israel has been
Yep,
experiencing
Trump and Bibi have to go.
intense missile activity incoming mainly from its believed Iran. There have been multiple alerts being issued, mainly around
Yeah, we're not getting the whole
Jerusalem and
story here,
central
man.
Israel areas,
Trump and the
but also,
administration are
in the
definitely
south.
lying about
They
how
seem
it's
to have
going
been
over
the
there.
target. The authorities there have been telling people to take shelter, reporting
TDS is real
incoming Iranian
from the
missiles.
same
There have been
people that keep
reports
crying
of
about Joe
explosions,
Biden.
and it's
Thank
thought
you.
that some of the warheads have been these cluster type of munitions that distribute these smaller bomblets. So we are getting reports that at least 8 locations, mainly across central Israel, have been impacted by falling parts, falling debris, or falling explosives.
I know
There
that,
is,
Vaughn.
reports of damage. We're seeing that on social media. We're
I'm not
still
saying
trying
I
to
agree with the
ascertain,
regime or I
what
like the
casualties there
regime.
might have been.
This isn't
Earlier
about
there
their
were
regime.
also
It's about
alarms
us.
being issued right across a number of areas in northern Israel. They were later lifted. People were told it was safe to come out from shelters once more. But that really follows a pattern we have been seeing through Sunday, with multiple alerts being issued.
Well, I hope we make it out a little bit, Joe. I'm hoping to collect Social Security next year, so, I'd like to get a little bit of it.
But also attacks from the north, across the border, from Lebanon, from Hezbollah groups. So we had one 6-hour period on Sunday where there were 23 different alerts, and it does all add to this general sense of exhaustion amongst ordinary Israelis who, many of them, have safe rooms in their homes, or they have access to shelters, are constantly having to go and take shelter. And there is a sense that the government had said right at the start of this conflict that as soon as possible they would start to drop some of these emergency measures and give a return
The
to
website is TrumpRx.
normalcy. But with
right?
these latest intensive exchanges, we are seeing that, for example, some of the school
All you're getting is
restrictions,
a
remain in
discount
place. Many
card for
schools
use
are
at
still
pharmacies. That's
closed.
it.
The restrictions on the numbers of people who can gather, that's also remains in place. And now we're hearing from the authorities that they are actually increasing the restrictions on the numbers of flights coming in and out of Ben Gurion International Airport and the numbers of passengers that can be on those flights.
Yeah,
Peach Creek,
just
the
shifting
GOP
now
is screwed.
from, Israel, of course,
Unless things
the
turn
Israeli
around
army chief has said that
dramatically
the
in this
operation that
economy,
it's
in
carrying
this
out
country,
against
and with
Hezbollah
Trump's
in,
approval rating,
Lebanon, that's the neighboring country,
they're going to
has
get
only
wiped out
begun.
in November. Wiped out. Why do you think Trump is pushing the Save America
that's right.
Act?
I mean, I think generally, despite this sense of war weariness, there is a feeling amongst most Israelis that this has to be done. They feel
Cuba's definitely being pushed by Rubio
Iranian regime
in his big shoes.
The current regime there is an existential threat. Similarly, they believe that Hezbollah has to be taken on, has to be effectively defanged or disabled.
I think they took out Maduro to stop the oil flow to Cuba to force regime change in
the
Cuba.
Israeli military have been launching artillery and airstrikes into southern Lebanon. They've been continuing this campaign of destroying buildings and bridges that they say have been used by Hezbollah.
I agree,
And it all,
Matthew.
It does seem to lead to a sense that
And the
they're
Dow Jones has
preparing
been
the ground
dropping.
for something,
Dropped what, like
much
600
bigger.
points Friday or something like that?
Hezbollah has been
Stock market's screwed.
targeting Israeli soldiers inside Lebanon and also in northern Israel. And the Israeli military has confirmed that during Sunday, 7 soldiers have been hurt, some of them wounded by a drone. But the Israeli military
40 years to get
have confirmed that their offensive into Lebanon will continue.
I don't have 40 years left in me, Joe.
Whatever happens with Iran in their combined efforts where their allies, the United States, against the Iranian regime, it does seem they have a separate agenda that they will still committed to following through with many Israeli senior military officials going on Israeli media, I think preparing the Israeli public for a long, hard conflict
it's all
ahead,
falling apart on
as
them.
they continue their fight with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like it might be a bit more long-term. Thanks very much, Rog McBride there in Amman. On the ground in Lebanon, airstrikes on the south of the country have killed at least 4 people on Sunday. Israeli forces have attacked the Qasemiya Bridge. That's a key crossing that links Lebanon south to the rest of the country. President Joseph Aoun has called the attack a prelude to ground invasion. Israeli forces said the bridges are being used by Hezbollah and that they need to be destroyed to prevent attacks on northern Israel. Well, Abaida Hito is live for us in Beirut. Abaida, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun saying that the attack on that bridge, I mean, of course, this is main infrastructure in the country, is a prelude to ground invasion. In what way is that?
Absolutely. Strong words of condemnation from the Lebanese president. He's saying that the Israeli forces are trying to cut the connection between the north and south of the country, describing it as a kind of collective punishment, a deliberate attempt to create a de facto buffer zone in the south of the country.
Trump doesn't care, Joe.
The Lebanese president says that it's going to make the humanitarian aid delivery to people south of the Litani River extremely difficult, and that the targeting of critical infrastructure, this civilian infrastructure like bridges, roads, there have also been 40 medical facilities targeted, over 24 paramedics and other emergency workers killed in these attacks. And the president is saying that the international community should condemn this along with Lebanon and intervene actually to prevent these kinds of attacks from happening, calling them possible violations of international humanitarian law. But what we're seeing is the Israeli forces expanding their operations significantly. There is a significant increase in the intensity of the fighting on the ground.
I hear you, Joe.
In the Khiyam front, on the eastern side of the country, the fighting is now street to street in and around Khiyam.
Enjoy retirement,
between
man.
Hezbollah and the Israeli forces in the center, south of the country. There
Hell
are
no,
an increased
Jose.
number of
Hell
airstrikes in the
no.
Nabatea region and Marja'yun. There is
Let
a
Barron
significant
go fight.
there is a significant uptick in attacks by Israeli forces in the west of the country. The Naqoura front is also intensifying, with Israeli forces trying to actually cross the border and reach this very strategic area near the Mediterranean Sea. And with these threats from Israeli officials about the expansion of the operation in Lebanon, despite what happens in Iran, that's got things here definitely in a very high tense environment.
All right, thanks very much. Abeda Hito there in Beirut. Now, Iraqi authorities say 3 airstrikes have targeted an Iranian-aligned armed group in its stronghold south of Baghdad. The group is a former paramilitary
thank God we
coalition
don't have a
called
draft.
Ashad al-Shabi, that's also known as Popular Mobilization Forces.
It is
Iraqi
stupidity,
officials say
Matthew.
The strikes came after an attack targeted a U.S. diplomatic and
Some things never
logistics
change.
center at Baghdad International Airport. Let's go live to the Iraqi capital, where Nicholas Huck is live for us. Nicholas, how are the Americans responding to the attacks on their facility exactly?
Well, to the attack, the drone attack, the U.S. used its its air defense system called CRAS, and it was used to intercept that drone. At the same time, they're evacuating from Victory Base. So there were NATO forces that were evacuated, and then American troops using planes that left the country. But this comes just hours after an Iran-backed militia group in Iraq declared or gave an ultimatum to the Americans: 5 more days to leave the American embassy, or else they will launch attacks against the U.S. embassy. And the difference with the Victory Base, which is on the outskirts of Baghdad, well, the U.S. embassy is in the heart of the Green Zone, in the heart of the city. And this has a profound effect for people here. They've lived through 5 years of relative stability after the war, and they are seeing this war
Thank you,
come
Matthew.
onto them, a war that
I appreciate
they
it,
did
man.
not ask for.
Thank you very
And
much.
so there's a sense of uncertainty among Iraqis. And earlier today, the Iraqi Prime Minister visited the headquarters of the intelligence headquarters, where there was a strike upon the building that left 1 person dead. And he was there to assess the situation, but also reassure and unite the people around this war, and to reassure them that they'll do all they can to ensure that there are as little attacks as possible. But the Iran-backed militia says they will continue to target U.S. positions in Iraq. Meanwhile, the Americans continue to launch airstrikes against these Iran-backed militias. One that happened just early on today, south of Baghdad, north of Babylon. Sarah?
All right, thanks very much. Nicholas Huck there with the update from Baghdad in Iraq.
I'm doing my best, Matthew. Doing my best. We all need to reveal the truth and spread the truth.
Some of the other news. Israeli settlers have attacked several Palestinian villages in the north of
I'll
occupied
be right
West
back.
Bank. Homes and vehicles were set on fire in villages near Jenin and Nablus. There are reports of several injuries from the attacks. The Israeli military says it sent troops to respond to what it called extremist settlers, but Palestinians say such investigations almost never brought to justice. Now, 3 Palestinians were killed after an Israeli airstrike targeted Al-Nusayrat refugee camp, that's in central Gaza. In a separate strike on Sunday, 3 others were injured in an attack on a residential building in Gaza City. Israel has continued to bomb Gaza. That's despite a US-brokered ceasefire back in October. More than 600 Palestinians have been killed since then. Leftist candidates have performed well in France's municipal elections. Socialist Party candidate Emmanuel Grégoire has won the race for Paris mayor. Exit polls also indicate that Marseille's left-wing mayor Benoît Payan defeated his far-right rival Franck Alicio. These polls are being seen as a litmus test for next year's presidential election. Cuba has restored power to nearly half of the capital, Havana. That's less than 24 hours after the national grid collapsed for the second time in a week. The country's aging energy grid is under growing strain, and that's because of a US-imposed oil blockade. The blackouts have left many people struggling to get basic supplies, and that includes
I hear you,
food
Joe. The
and
no more wars president. My granddaughter wants to know why people need chins.
Istanbul's old city has brought
I don't
down
know.
2 buildings. 9 people were caught under the rubble in the central Fatih district, which is home to historic sites like the Blue Mosque and Hagia Sophia. Emergency crews have been pulling people out from the debris. Officials say that all of those trapped have now been rescued. All right, well, Inside Story is next, looking at Iran's future after, of course, many of its top leaders have been assassinated. We will be back with our special coverage.
Been assassinated, and they keep replacing them
30 minutes from now.
by younger,
Do stay with
smarter,
us. Mohammed Jamjoon will be with you next.
more vile people.
The latest news as it breaks.
The war has even split Trump's MAGA base, with some of his hardcore supporters saying he's gone from America first to Israel first.
Yes, he has.
Detailed coverage.
The Sri Lankan Navy have been working in the seas to try and recover as many survivors and bodies.
From around the world.
Bangladesh's new government may soon be facing serious economic challenges caused by a distant war.
That would precipitate an attack against American forces.
To prevent Iran from getting nukes.
There is no coherent strategy, and you can see that's reflected in the media coverage.
Many American media see it like a video game. From the graphics on the screen to who they speak to, war for them is big business.
We saw this exact same pattern happen in Gaza, the same lazy, flattened reporting that we saw in Gaza when it comes to the war on Iran.
The Listening Post decodes the media on Al Jazeera.
Who's left running Iran? Much of the top leadership has been assassinated, but the country's still fighting. How's it been able to withstand such blows, and can the Iranian government survive this war? This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm James Bays. Many of Tehran's top leaders have been killed, from the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei to senior security figures assassinated by the US and Israel. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have framed the killings as victories in their war on Iran, but Iran says its governance structure is built to withstand such blows, and that means the loss of any individual shouldn't cause the downfall of the whole system. But how does this unique leadership structure work? Who's keeping the government running, and how? And what's it mean for the ongoing war? We'll put those questions to our guests when they join us in a moment. That's after this report from Imogen Kimber.
3 senior Iranian officials killed in Israeli airstrikes in 1 week. Security Chief Ali Larijani.
This war could end up going on for months, years, who knows? Trump doesn't know what he's doing, so he could have sworn they'd be done by now, and they're still fighting because he's stupid. So it could go on until he's out of office.
Close advisor Ali Shamkhani and Defense Minister Aziz Nasir-Zadeh were also killed on February 28th.
That's right, Matthew. You are
There's no one
correct.
left to negotiate, says the US president.
Their leaders are all gone. The next set of leaders are
This
all
lunatic.
gone. And the next set of leaders are mostly gone. And now nobody wants to be a leader over there anymore. We're having a hard time. We want to talk to them, and there's nobody to talk to. We have nobody to talk to. And you know
Bullshit.
what? We like it that way.
He's a liar.
But Tehran says it can and
A
will
demented
fight on.
liar.
Iran's leadership and government structure is complex. Each key position reportedly has several replacements ready.
That's right.
But most importantly, the structure of governance and Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps uses what's called a mosaic defense structure. It's decentralized. Not all leaders and commanders are based in Tehran, but spread across Iran and able to function independently. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says this is why bombing Tehran does not impact the country's ability to fight, and neither do the assassinations.
I do not know why the Americans and the Israelis still have not understood this point. The Islamic Republic of Iran has a strong political structure with established political, economic, and social institutions. The presence or absence of a single individual does not affect this structure.
Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been replaced by his son, Mojtaba Khamenei. People have not come out to protest against the government in large numbers, as the US had hoped. Many have been rallying against the US and Israel, although it is reported that government crackdowns on dissent is strong. So Iran says it will not surrender, and that it remains strong enough to fight on.
They can't surrender.
Imogen Kimber,
If
Al
they
Jazeera
surrender, they're
for Inside
dead.
Story.
So they have no choice but to fight. That's something
Let's
Trump
bring in our
doesn't
panel of
understand.
guests who are going to discuss all of this on today's Inside Story. And in Tehran, Hamid Reza Ghulamzadeh, director of House of Diplomacy, a think tank. In Geneva, Ali Vaez, director of the Iran project at the International Crisis Group. And in London, Tim Ripley, defence analyst and editor of Defence Eye. Can I start with you, Hamid Reza, there in Tehran? You have had many of your leaders killed right at the beginning of this war. There's been a policy by Israel particularly, but also of the US, of assassination and decapitation. Over 40 top officials and commanders have been killed. Who is running things in Tehran?
Thank you very much for having me. If
I
you
agree.
look at Iran, the way the Americans and Israelis look at it and call it a regime, then it would be dependent on the people and figures. But if you look at it as a country, which is and a normal country working just like any other country, it is structure-based. So the system and the structure of the power is working. And for Iran, that's the story. Every official has its own position. And after the 12-day war last June, it was ordered to all the officials, either politicians or the armed forces, to appoint at least 3 substitutions for themselves. So at least 3 people or up to 5 people are clear to be in the chain of command for each position. So with that, even if the people are removed, the system would work very smoothly and very correctly as it has been supposed to do.
But who? Hamid Reza, who is in overall charge? Because it's supposed to be the new supreme leader, the son of the previous supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. But no one has seen him. It's 2 weeks since he took control, supposedly.
He's in Russia.
He's not been seen when he got the job. He's not been seen. It's a very important time in Iran. It's Eid and it's also Nowruz, the Persian New Year. He's not been seen. Where is he? Is he even alive? Some are asking.
So a commander-in-chief doesn't rule by being seen. He rules by giving orders, and he is doing the job by whatever it needs to do. And with the assassination that began with the assassination of the supreme leader, the previous supreme leader, everyone is demanding top officials not to appear in the public in order to prevent any sort of assassination. So we just lost a Minister of Intelligence, Khatib, a spokesperson of the IRGC, Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani, and many people have been assassinated in recent days. So in order to prevent that, even the public are publicly demanding the officials not to appear. Even when, for example, for the Eid prayers,
I wish Trump would disappear.
People came, actually, some of the officials appeared in the public prayer. Many people actually asked them not to do that. They criticized why they appear in the public. Because people have this understanding that
the Bibi videos are really weird. Really weird.
Duties, and it doesn't need to be in the public. So people have understood that, and they don't need to come to the public to be in one way or the other traced by the Americans or Israelis. So that's the way he is right now controlling the government as the top leader. He is in touch with the commanders and with the politicians, and they are doing their job everything is working.
I saw a report
Okay,
that
let
he
me
was
bring in
wounded
Ali Vaez.
and shipped off to
Yes,
Russia
there is this
to be
policy
fixed up,
of
and he's
decentralization.
just
We'll come
staying
to
there
that,
now, which
in
is
more
probably a
detail
smart
in our
move.
discussion. But for
We can't get to him if he's
to
in
lose
Russia.
this number of leaders, to lose the supreme leader who'd been in charge for so long, and some might say Ali Larijani, who obviously was not the supreme leader, but a very important security official, in some ways, in terms of the organization of the country, was perhaps more important.
Well, James, this just shows you how resilient the Islamic Republic is. It is a regime that is very entrenched and is also very deeply benched. I think one problem that US and Israel have is that they end up believing their own rhetoric that they're dealing with a foreign terrorist organization here, whereas in fact, this is a state. And it has layers and layers of people who can step in and take over positions. Now, when it gets to the supreme leader, I am of the view that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader who was assassinated, was the last supreme leader of Iran. His son, even if he is alive, owes everything he has, his position, to the Revolutionary Guards. If this system survives, if the country survives this war, it will be thanks to the Revolutionary Guards, and so they would be at the pinnacle of power, and they are the ones who are calling the shots.
Do you think,
Now,
Ali,
before,
Ali, it's possible that he's not alive? Do you think that that is a gambit that could be played by this government? There's no way the Israelis and the US can target a man who's not actually alive, of course.
It's a good ploy.
We can't rule anything out because there hasn't been any sign of life. We have seen two statements from him read by somebody else, but we have not seen any image or any audio that indicates that he is indeed alive. I understand that for security reasons, he should probably not take any risks.
I agree.
But, again, we don't have any evidence.
The people always
to point to
suffer.
the contrary.
The people everywhere.
The final point I'll make is that
especially over there in Iran
Ali Larijani, the
and the
National Security
other
Advisor,
countries.
who was killed just
Everyone's
a few days
suffering.
ago, we're really stepping in to fill the vacuum and run the country. And that power, I think, has now gravitated towards the Speaker of Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Qalibaf, who's also a former commander of the Revolutionary Guards. And if even he is eliminated, I'm sure that there will be other people who would be able to step in and prevent the system from imploding.
Tim, we heard Hamid Reza say he doesn't need to appear in order to run things from behind the scenes. But normally you'd expect in a country that is facing the challenges and the bombardment that Iran is facing, a leader to appear, or his voice at least to appear, to rally the people at such a difficult time, would you not?
It's a very obvious point, but remember this country is under direct attack and its leaders are a prime target. So it's obvious they would try to make very drastic security
Who exonerated Trump?
themselves being targeted and located by the Israelis and the Americans.
Where?
I mean, we've heard lots of sort of stories about how the Americans and Mossad are
No one's
tracking,
overturned his felony
Iranian
convictions.
leaders through the traffic cameras or the mobile phone systems. All those electronic footprints could lead to the Americans and the Israelis towards these figures. So trying to cut themselves off and trying to hide is an obvious thing to do at this moment in time, because the strategy of Iran is to survive. At the end of it, if they have a political leadership that can stand up and say, we are running the country, they can claim victory. So in the duel between
That is
the
correct.
Americans, the Israelis and the Iranian government, surviving must be a #1 priority for the Iranian state. And
That's what I've been saying.
Extreme measures to protect itself has to be an obvious thing to do.
Hamid Reza, clearly the intelligence in Iran was compromised for them to be able to target so many leaders. But do you think going forward, as the commands transfer to a different level, it's going to be harder for the CIA and Mossad? They clearly had built up a good intelligence picture on the leaders, but as it transfers to the second in command or the third in command, might be much harder for them then.
As it moves on forward, it would be more difficult for the Americans and Israelis to target the officials. The security and the considerations would be stronger here in Iran. And on the other side, they are the figures are more unknown to the Americans, so they cannot easily find out who is replacing who and who is doing the things, and it would be more difficult to find out about them and then find intelligence and then target them. So every layer that we go on, it would be more difficult for them, and it would be better for Iran. That's why one of the reasons that it is said that time is in favor of Iran, and as we go on in time, it would be better for Iran and more damaging to the Israelis and the Americans, because they have lost, they have already actually run out of bank of targets. They have run out of bank of officials as targets, and then it would be just going to destroy the infrastructure or the civilians and houses to be attacked. Actually, for the past couple of days, everything that has been attacked in Tehran were residential buildings, just people who are retired people. At least 2 or 3 people I know were just retired people without any connection to the IRGC, to the military, to the government. No, nothing. So they're just killing civilians in order to make people frightened. That's all that the Americans are doing.
Well, Iran
now.
isn't the aggressor when it comes to the U.S. I mean, obviously they've been funding terrorism for years in the region, but I mean, this is a war of choice for Trump, for sure.
In the attacks about the oil infrastructure. So when we are moving on, when the time passes, it would be more difficult for them and easier actually for the Iranian side to make better targets in the fight.
Tim, I mean, if we look at what President Trump said, and I know when you look at his aims and what he wanted to do with this war, some of it's very contradictory, and he said so much, but one of the things he said was he wanted a Venezuela model, that perhaps he could get someone who could take over the country with all of its structures intact. He wanted an Iranian version of the Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez. They've made that impossible, have they not, with this continual tactic of assassinating leaders?
President Trump has famously said, you know, we're running out of people to talk to. I mean, that's one of his quotes that he's come
It
out
looks
with.
that way, Josh.
I bow to the expertise of
Once again, I don't know how, since they've been obliterated.
I would sort of imagine that
I don't know, David. How would you feel about China running the Strait?
Ideological motivation
I don't know.
Than the Venezuelans or other countries where Trump has intervened in the past. And this is a very different society, a different political culture, a different political leadership, and a different scenario. So, I mean, lots of commentary about how President Trump has bitten off more than he's chewing this war, and certainly American understanding of how the Iranian leadership works.
Draft the feminists? Why, Jackson?
Ali, let's talk about Iran's military strategy here, and we'll get to that policy of decentralization. I mean, Iran has relied in the past
Whiskey Pete doesn't want them in the military.
On its proxies. They have been degraded. It seems the things they're relying on now are their missiles and this policy of decentralization and fighting an asymmetric war, not fighting the US at its own game, but basically leveraging effects on the global economy. Within that strategy, how important is this mosaic defense that they've got?
Well, it is very important because the US has demonstrated extraordinary capabilities in the past and in this conflict as well, but especially in the invasion of Iraq in 2003, of destroying command and control. And so that's when the Iranians realized that they would have to hedge their bets, they would have to divide command and control among all the 31 provinces so that cutting off the central node doesn't paralyze the entire system. Now that creates potentially some space also for freelancing, which could be dangerous. But in this particular conflict, I don't think that command and control from Tehran has been disconnected. Remember that the Iranians knew as of June 2025, at the end of the 12-day war, that another round was coming, another conflict was around the corner, And so they had all sorts of contingency plans in place. They had an escalation roadmap that I feel that they are implementing step by step. And that has been clearly communicated to all the command and controls throughout the provinces. So I don't see a lot of space for freelancing at this moment. And again, the central node is still operational, but the concept is basically to stretch this conflict in time and in space, because Iran has a much higher capacity to absorb pain than the United States and Israel. And so the idea is that eventually the US and Israel would have to blink first, because Iran has longer endurance in this conflict than they do.
Hamid Reza, you told us earlier on about this mosaic strategy that they designated people 3 ranks down in case people were assassinated. But isn't there a problem there that you are going to get less experienced, less competent, less capable people as more junior officers step up?
To some extent, you can say that, but there is one point. Either you can take it positive or negative. But many of the officials and commanders who have been killed so far have been in power for decades. This means that they have been very experienced, but it means that they have been conservative as well. And many people, many younger generations, have been along with them throughout these decades. So they have been trained and they have been informed by what they were doing, and they are familiar with the decisions, and they are younger and actually less conservative compared to those people.
Trump's convictions were not overturned.
Replacing them. So to some extent,
they were
yes.
Not.
To some extent, no. It would be actually better for them to be.
I don't know where you're getting your information
with
from.
More ideas about what to do, with more solutions and with more options on the table. And with, we can say, more courage, maybe we can say, or let's say more adventurous thinking.
China does get most of their oil from the Strait.
So I don't think, and we are not seeing
that
for
is
the
true.
past 3 weeks, that this loss has made Iran weaker compared to the past. And actually, what we are seeing as we are going on, we are seeing stronger and more courageous activities from the armed forces.
Ali, I mean, you said to us you believe for now there is still some central control, but the plan is, if they have to, delegating everything to 31 different units, full service units that can fight. Isn't there also a problem there for all of us that then there could be knee-jerk reactions, there are no checks built in? You could say escalation is built into such a system.
Absolutely, but that's also the point, that the more the US and Israel manage to remove experienced, more pragmatic, on relative terms, leaders, the higher the risk will be that there will be even more conflagration and more disasters around the region. We knew that Ayatollah Khamenei and Ali Larijani and people like them were cautious and to a degree even restrained in the way that they were behaving. In a way, one could say that they had become predictable.
Because
now
I live here, that's how I know how.
Less
what are you talking about?
More,
I'm going to block you from the chat,
hardline,
man.
I would say,
Knock it off.
Who are willing to take bigger risks.
Troll.
And that's also part of the point, that if the US and Israel want to continue to this war,
what are you
they would
is
end
this
up in
higher
a
court
situation
in
that
your
is
own
even,
mind?
More unpredictable. That is by design and not by improvisation. Iranians concluded that Trump's madman strategy could only be countered with a madman strategy of Iran's own making. And this is why the more power fragments and the more it is in the hands of inexperienced people, the more Iran is going to act like a madman.
Tim, as someone who's covered
Everybody's
numerous
insane.
conflicts around the world and studied them, what are the dangers of this multi-layered security system with overlapping forces?
What courtroom?
Is there a danger?
You're going bye-bye.
Things get more chaotic, there's no central chain of command, potentially different allegiances. They could turn on each other. This could be a recipe for civil disorder or eventually civil war.
It's obviously what the Americans want, and that's how they're trying to drive wedges in the Iranian elite and the Iranian government. But it also is a strength because this is turning into a war of attrition with both sides trying to hit the other's weaknesses. Now, the more and more that the Americans go after these prestige targets, the factories, the missile bases, the nuclear sites, the more the Iranian side has an incentive to go after the weakness of the Americans, which is fundamentally the Gulf oil industry and the price of oil. Now, that needs to be done in a relentless way if it's to be effective. So, we're seeing this for the past week after the gas field was hit. The Iranians have reacted, which shows that they are understanding what's going on around them and that there is a chain of command and an intelligence structure that's feeding them information about what to attack and what are the best places to attack. And they're continuing with this strategy of hitting the American weakness. Now, in any war of attrition, it's who blinks first, who suffers the most losses, who can't take the pounding anymore. Now, the Americans and the Israelis they also have an issue of divergence of objectives. The Israelis, as we've talked about before, want to cause as much damage to the Iranian state, the Iranian military as possible. The Americans obviously don't want that to go as far as undermining the global economy. So, the potential for this thing going out of control are enormous, not just within Iran, but on the US-Israeli side. So the more this thing goes on, the more danger there is. But that is in
Come on. Fuck. Hang on, guys. Hang on.
Like a pyramid sitting on its head. In the Islamic Republic, you have a multi-layered and multi-center power structure.
Sorry about that, guys.
Overlapping
Not my fault.
responsibilities and authority. And this is why you can't really bring the regime to its knees by killing the supreme leader or his successor or his successor's successor or some senior officials. I mean, it is quite stunning in the annals of war to take out so many
I agree, David.
four-star generals,
China is sneaky,
and top command,
and they're just waiting,
and for a system
waiting to take over Taiwan,
punching,
waiting for the right time.
and
I don't
acting
trust them.
according to a plan that was already
They're being very
put into
quiet about
place
all
even
this.
prior to this conflict. Now, the U.S. might try to take over some of Iran's territory, like some of the Gulf islands, in order to try to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. That is a very risky operation.
People hate Trump,
wouldn't
man.
necessarily deliver the
People hate Trump.
expected result, but it also is
That's
certain
baked
not
in.
to generate the outcome that the U.S. might have in mind, which is regime change. Because at the end of the day, you really need
You fucked up
a
COVID.
high number of
You got kicked out of
armed either
office.
opposition or boots on the
Biden
ground,
won.
which currently
4
doesn't
years later, the
exist,
Democrats
and
are in
creating it
disarray.
would create a lot of
They
time,
reelect Trump
and
because
it
they
could
forget
go
how much of a
wrong in more
lunatic
than
he
one
was,
way. It can
and they
result in
reelect
civil
him,
strife in a
and
country
we're a
like
year
Iran,
in,
which has a lot of ethno-sectarian
and
fault
now
lines.
people are
So
realizing,
all
oh
in
yeah,
all,
he's a
I think the
lunatic,
US
and now
got
he's
into
even
this
worse.
without really a strategy for the day after, but a lot of wishful thinking.
You got it, Davey. America
Thank you
is
very
definitely
much,
a mess.
Ali
A
Vyas,
big
Hamid Reza
fucking mess.
Ghulamzadeh, and Tim
Very
Ripley.
divided.
If you've missed any part of our discussion, remember you can see this and all of our programs anytime you want at our website, aljazeera.com. We'd like to hear your views too. Post them on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or find us on X. There we are at AJ Inside Story. And now that's it from me, James Bays, and all the team at Inside Story. Al Jazeera's coverage of the war continues in just a moment.
As the US-Israel war on Iran rages on, its impact has spread far beyond the battlefield. Energy prices are soaring as facilities and supply routes are targeted.
I think Trump completely fucked this up. Yeah, this is a war of choice. I don't think, you know,
Stay with Al Jazeera for extensive
I don't agree with Trump's position here at all, and I don't understand how MAGA Republicans think Trump, you know, is doing the right thing. They voted for no more foreign wars, and yet here we are in another foreign war. He also promised lower prices on day one. This is not going to get you lower prices.
By human beings, so it can all be solved by human beings if only we can learn to cooperate.
International filmmakers
I don't know.
and world-class journalists.
We'll see where this goes, but anybody who thinks that this, if Trump pulls out today, what? Pain in the ass cat. If Trump pulls out today, it doesn't mean prices go down tomorrow. I mean, $90 a barrel oil is probably already priced in for the foreseeable future. So he has fucked the economy for months and months, possibly years. Years. He has completely screwed the American economy. All he does is lie, and they lap it up. Yep, you got it. Yep, 100%.
As a fertilizer, and Australia imports most of its supplies. Shipping delays
I don't know.
in the Strait of Hormuz.
Once again, I don't like the Iranian regime. I don't like the Cuban regime. I'm not defending them. This isn't about them. This is about us and who we are as a people. About who we are as a civilization. And we're never going to evolve at all if we keep doing crap like this. It's never going to end. Trump's a troglodyte. He's got a lizard brain. He doesn't understand anything. He was brought up in an age. He was brought up in money, and that's all he knows. This is all just nothing but a grift and something to distract from the Epstein files and make him money at the end of the rainbow. That's it.
Hello, I'm Mohammed Jamjoul.
Right,
This is the
I'm
News
going to
Hour
do a
live
shot.
from
I'll be
Doha.
right back.
Coming up in the next 60 minutes. Israel comes under more Iranian missile attacks following Saturday's strikes that injured more than 180 people. U.S. and Israeli attacks hit Iranian cities for yet another day as casualties mount across the country. Iran says it will completely shut the Strait of Hormuz if Donald Trump follows through his threat of obliterating Iran's power plants over the key waterway. Israel blows up a bridge in southern Lebanon, cutting it off from the rest of the country. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun calls it a prelude to ground invasion. And Iraqi authorities say 3 airstrikes have targeted an Iranian-aligned armed group in its stronghold south of Baghdad. Israel is under another round of overnight
Cheers.
Iranian missile
L'chaim.
attacks. People are
Namaste.
seeing
Whatever.
scenes like this across the country. Falling shrapnel has been reported in several locations across southern and central Israel. Some communities
Come on.
have reported fires and damage. Earlier, Israeli police said an Iranian missile struck a kindergarten in Rishon LeZion, south of Tel Aviv. It was closed at the time and no one was injured. Overnight on Saturday, strikes on 2 cities in southern Israel caused extensive damage. The incidents have raised questions over Israel's
perception, discover new things, do corrections, and adapt to the situation.
That was a weird
The
transition.
Air Force is managing a complex defensive battle. More than 90% of the launches fired at Israel are intercepted.
Hello again to everybody checking out the stream. Welcome. Like and subscribe. It helps the channel. Love you all.
There have been new missiles launched from Iran to Israel these last few hours. Has there been an update on the kinds of damage that this has caused? And what else are we hearing from government officials about the overall situation right now?
Yeah, that's right. This is
Bibi and the Israelis definitely have way too much control over what happens here. Way too much. And that cuts across party lines.
Experiencing pretty intensive missile activity coming from Iran. There have been multiple alerts
I agree,
being
Josh.
issued, especially in the Jerusalem and central Israel areas, all the way down to southern Israel, when missiles were detected coming in salvos from Iran. People were told to take to their shelters across broad swathes of the country. There were reports of explosions. There are also reports that some of the munitions, at least one of the warheads, was one of these cluster-type munitions that spreads these smaller bomblets over a wide area. And we are now seeing
I
on
agree,
social
Josh.
media, with the confirmation from the authorities, reports of damage over a wide area. The actual damage itself is fairly limited, but because of the spread of these salvos, it does mean that large communities, large areas of...
Oh, come on.
Israel have been affected, and so there are reports of damage that we are seeing, but the alert now seems to have been lifted for the time being. There was also alerts earlier during this nighttime in northern Israel, and this follows a pattern of alarms being raised throughout Sunday, especially in the northern area, because they face not only incoming missiles from Iran, but also from north of the border, from Lebanon, from Hezbollah. So they have had multiple salvos. It's estimated that during Sunday, the whole of Israel had 10 salvos fired at it. And in the northern area, people there, communities there, had a series of 23 separate air raid alerts and alarms during a period of 6 hours. It does add to this feeling of exhaustion. Now
You're making some really good points, Josh.
Also,
yes, they do. They're a horrible neighbor.
That life
horrible.
has not returned anything like normal. The authorities
They're loaded
at the start
with
of this war had
bloodlust.
said that as soon as possible they'd start to lift some of these emergency restrictions, such as on schools, such as on gatherings, indoors and outdoors. And in fact, if anything, the authorities are increasing restrictions when it comes, for example, to the operation of flights in and out of Ben Gurion International Airport, with the authorities now saying that they are having to restrict the numbers of planes that come in and out and the number of passengers on those planes.
Rob, let me ask you also about those Iranian missile strikes that occurred on Saturday on the southern Israeli cities of Arad and Dimona, because many were shocked by the extent of the destruction and the scale.
He closed the border, but he's bringing migrants back in to work the farms because Republican farmers don't have anybody to work the farms.
What more can
So
you
he's
tell us
backtracking on
about
that.
the level of concern when it comes to these particular incidents and Israel's overall defense strategy right now?
That's right. It did cause concern. That's why they are conducting this investigation into how these missiles got through. But the argument from the Israeli authorities, from the military and so on, is that no matter how sophisticated your air defenses are, and in Israel's case, they are extremely sophisticated. We know that they have over years been developing various layers of very sophisticated ways of intercepting missiles, and in fact claim a success rate of
we do
more than
need
90% of missiles and drones being intercepted and shot
They're
down.
realizing that
their
now.
argument is that no matter how proficient you are, some missiles
I'm not
will
saying we have to have
always
open
get
borders,
through.
but
The
you know,
Iranians
we do
have
need
been
some
making
low-wage
much of
workers
this,
working
saying
these
that,
jobs,
they have got around
jobs that
the,
Americans
missile
aren't going to do.
defenses, and that the people of Israel should be worried about with all of these doomsday predictions that now they can be subjected to all sorts of destruction from on high and so on. A lot of that in Israel itself is being dismissed as merely Iran trying to exploit the propaganda value of these attacks. But I think it is true that as this conflict has gone on, and we had a repeat
I'm sure
of the
Russia has
conflict
given
that
them a
we had
lot,
during the
maybe even
12-day,
China too.
War last June. Some of the missile strategy has been developing. So we are seeing, for example, the use of these cluster-type warheads that spread munitions over much wider areas that are very hard for defenses to deal with. And also, just finally, the use of smaller salvos of missiles, not firing all of the missiles in one heavy salvo, trying to overcome air defenses, but much smaller packets which keep the air raid alarms coming at a much more frequent rate that sends people, a very tired population in Israel, running once more for their shelters or for their safe rooms.
All right, that's Al Jazeera's Rob McBride live for us from the Jordanian capital, Amman. Thanks so much, Rob. In Iran, several cities have once again come under U.S. and Israeli attacks. This was the scene in Khorramabad in the immediate aftermath of an overnight strike. The city was hit by a series of airstrikes on Sunday night. People there are reporting widespread damage and destruction. And the Iranian Red Crescent shared these images from the northwestern city of Tabriz. U.S.-Israeli strikes have killed more than 1,400 people across the country. The Trump administration is stepping up its threats against Iran over the Strait of Hormuz, a key waterway that Tehran has blocked for weeks. President Trump issued an ultimatum on Saturday saying the U.S. will obliterate Iran's power plants.
Yeah, robots taking over jobs is great till it takes over yours.
Iran says the strait isn't closed, but those that Tehran sees as enemy ships will be blocked from passing through. It's also vowed a swift retaliation should Trump...
I saw they were able to hit the F-35s, Josh. That's wild.
In reiteration of our previous warning, if any fuel or energy facilities in Iran are targeted, we will respond by targeting energy and technology institutions and desalination plants linked to America and the Zionist entity in the region.
And there's defiance on the streets of Tehran. There's a pro-government rally where many waved flags and held pictures of new Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei.
American Christians are the worst
Some
type of
attendees
Christians.
also slammed the U.S. President, Donald
They're
Trump.
all hypocritical.
As usual, since the beginning of the war, Trump has made many false statements, talked a lot, done nothing. Because in the face of Iran's power, he is nobody and can do nothing. He only talks. Trump and Israel claim they have won the war 10 times a day. They still haven't accomplished anything. A clear example is the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Trump has gone to the superpowers, NATO, and others to ask for help to open it, but he will achieve
I agree,
nothing.
Matthew.
Because when faced with
They're
people
false
like
Christians
this,
here.
present on the scene,
When they demonize the least among us, they're not speaking for Jesus or speaking from the teachings of Jesus at all.
And it's multi-layered.
It's heretical.
When it comes to the different authorities and sectors within the state.
They do pay taxes.
Military, diplomacy, politicians. So they're all within one frame.
Yeah, Cuba will fold soon because they're being starved out
American interests
by
in the
Trump.
Region and Israel.
You think Trump cares about the Cuban people?
Targeting of
You're a moron if you think Trump gives a shit about them. He wants to build another Mar-a-Lago down there, take over real estate. He doesn't give a shit about the people.
A map showing several power plants and facilities across the Gulf and in Israel. Also, we heard from them saying that the Strait of Hormuz will continue to be closed till these.
So, Josh, you're saying we wasted hundreds of billions of dollars on stealth technology? Of course we did.
Politician and someone who is believed to be in the war room right now, also said that this is going to lead to retaliation, and later on he tweeted once again saying that this is going to also lead to retaliation towards American financial companies and whoever works with them. The foreign ministry, as you just read,
I have no idea why you can't read Josh's comments. He's not blocked or restricted in any way, as far as I know.
Companies who are hesitating because they fear the war of choice, as he said, and this strait is open to the friends of Iran. They are exploiting the leverage they have on the Hormuz Strait, and this is causing disruptions in the energy market, especially if there's also another strait closed like Bab el-Mandab.
It's got to be a Josh issue. Hey, Josh, people can't see your comments.
And there'll be another
You have some sort of setting that's blocking it.
So this is what they are relying on right now, plus the retaliation that they are vowing to do in case they are attacked in their power plants. So
it's nothing
Iran
on my end.
Is trying its best during this war to raise the price, put more pain on other parties in order to pressure the United States to stop.
What kind of
war.
insider?
Well, joining us now from Tehran is Abbas Aslani. He's a senior research fellow at the Center for Middle East Strategic Studies. Abbas, thanks for being
I don't know,
with us.
Joshua.
Look, we've heard
I don't know.
escalatory rhetoric from
I
the
haven't done
American
anything on my
president and
end.
from Iranian officials.
I can see
From
your
point of
your
view,
posts,
are there
no problem.
any attempts right now to try to find some kind of diplomatic off-ramp and de-escalate the situation?
Are you part of the deep state, Josh? Because I'm part of the deep state. Maybe that's why I can see your tweets,
in the capital city, we heard
your chats.
several explosions, specifically in the eastern part of the city.
I don't know.
It is not clear where was
Something in your privacy settings, maybe?
But
I don't
even
know.
those who are, to not hearing those explosions here in Tehran are having an eye what happens in the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, that's the
and
problem,
most
Josh.
specifically
You're in
what
California.
might emerge,
You liberal hippie.
following the ultimatum or the threat made by the U.S. president in terms of targeting Iran's energy infrastructure. It seems that as we might be approaching a potential end to this ongoing war, maybe sooner or later, the two sides are trying to set the terms for a kind of conclusion whereby they are thinking of not just ending the ongoing hostility, but about establishing a strategic equation whereby their long-term security
maybe
interests
people have just
are
figured out how to
guaranteed.
track these aircraft down now, man. You know?
That it will
I mean, it was
continue to
revolutionary
fight,
technology
the moment that
decades
they
ago,
reach
but
a
is it
point
still?
that,
I don't know.
They will make sure that there will be no further attacks
Libtards
against the country. This is part of, let's say, a strategy by Tehran, which is aimed at
Is Trump a
stopping
libtard?
cycle where the
Because he's a
United
big
States,
fucking problem.
calls for negotiations, then engages in a military conflict, then the shadow of war above Iran. And what is more important for Tehran, is not just stopping the ongoing conflict, but also removing the shadow of the conflict from above the country. And that's why we are hearing from Iranian officials that they are not also showing any sign of, let's say, surrender or, let's say, defeat in the face of those threats made by Trump. But they're saying that even if there is a cost to be paid in terms of,
Get ready for more market downsides tomorrow morning. Asia Pacific market set to fall.
It needs to be paid at the moment in order to make
U.S.
sure
stock market will
that
fall tomorrow.
a future attack will not happen against the country. In the meantime, Iran is threatening that if it is attacked, it will, respond in more severe
Trump doesn't
terms
love
and
our systems,
intensity
Joshua.
in order
Come on,
to
man.
inflict heavy costs
Trump loves
on
Trump.
the United States
And if he could use
Israel
our
as well as
system
their
to make
allies
more money,
in order to
so be it.
somehow secure the new security arrangement.
Comments changed it to all. All right, Jennifer's got something about the settings in there. If anybody wants to read it, Billy, welcome. Why is this doing this?
With Gulf countries that they have attacked thus far?
Well, in relation to the first part of the question, there could be many, demands from Iranian side for any kind of, let's say,
Sorry about the streaming issues, guys. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's me or them.
The most important point is that there should be a guarantee that this will not happen again. Whether this does this
Joss is a secret moderator.
Happen through the words,
I can make him a
let's
moderator.
say promises that the United States are supposed to be made. that's your question. I think Iran is seeking an
Matthew.
objective guarantee, which is those costs that are paid today that could work as a preventive factor in future. Also, Iran is saying that it needs compensation from the American side and the other side for the war and the damages that have been inflicted on the country. And in addition to that, the new architecture in the region, which is being supposed to be built, will not be the same as in the past, and the new regional order could be somehow different from the past. And this is something which could be subject to negotiations. But one of the factors which needs to be addressed is the day after, whereby if this is over, Iran's relations with the regional countries need to be rebuilt. That is going to be a difficult job.
Yeah.
Iran has been
you got it, Billy. Put a bunch of incompetent people that don't know what they're doing in charge.
Territory to the United States, but yet we are seeing that those neighboring countries are unhappy with what has been taking place and Iran targeting locations in those countries. So one of those issues, an important issues will be to rebuild those trusts, however, will be difficult. And I think, this needs to be done in a longer term, and in the shorter term, it might not be possible to somehow recover from this situation, and this is something I think which will take time to recover.
Abbas, let me also ask you
guys, if you can't see somebody's chat, change it from top chat to live chat,
what do you think those discussions
and you should be able to see everybody's chats. Thank you, Jennifer.
I think at the time that everybody is expecting a potential new escalation and maybe a new stage of this war, everybody is trying to make sure that the situation is controlled. Because if the United States
Billy's coming in hot tonight
in Iran will retaliate against the United States and Israel and some facilities in the region, saying that it can maybe turn the region into a dark region. And in addition to that, it is also likely that new fronts like Yemenis also closing the Bab al-Mandab, as well as Suez Canal, and this can be also a new front, that the repercussions will not be limited to the region, but it can go beyond and could be something global. And that's why it seems that in addition to the regional actors and players...
Thank you, Joshua, for the subscription. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
And they want to make sure that the situation does not get out of the control, and they are trying to somehow contribute to the process. And,
yeah, wonderful. It would be a good time to buy stock in electric cars, except that Trump got rid of all of the incentives to buy electric cars. He hates them. He got rid of all the infrastructure spending that was going to happen under Biden to build out all of the chargers that we'd need.
U.S. President Donald Trump's
because he's all about oil. Him and his billionaire oil buddies. They don't like electric. They don't like wind. They don't like solar. He wants to get rid of all of it because he's fucking stupid.
The Trump administration right now, after President Trump gave Iran 48 hours to open the strait, or if not, the power plants in the country would be obliterated. In the past week, we saw Trump pressuring the European Union to participate and create a coalition to open up the Strait of Hormuz. Initially, the European Union has
Trump should worry more about his cankles and less about pressuring other countries to clean up his fucking mess.
And did not endorse. However, we do know that on Sunday, President Trump spoke to the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, and discussed the necessity
World War III might happen if Israel drops a nuke on Iran. There's already rumors that that might be a possibility. Who knows?
The Treasury, Scott Bessent, announced that the United States is waiving
that doesn't make any sense, Joshua. You should be able to subscribe to as many channels as you want. Now you're yanking my chain, buddy. Come on.
In supermarkets, they say that they're extremely concerned about the possibility of inflation, about the price of gas going up. In this country right now, the price of gas has gone up around $1 since this war started. And this is just not about the impact that it has on people's life, but also about elections. This is political. There's midterms. Elections later on
I pay for
this
premium,
year. Historically,
Billy,
the
so I
price
don't
of
get
oil
adverts.
has played a
So
crucial role
can't help you
in
with that one.
elections in the United States, and what is happening right now will certainly have
YouTube
an
always
impact
has
on how
gremlins,
people
though.
vote.
Always something
Teresa
going
Wu,
on.
Al Jazeera,
Weird.
Washington.
Following Trump's remarks, Senate leader Chuck
God
Schumer,
damn.
who's also a Democrat, called on members of Congress to testify on the Iran war.
This war needs to come to an end.
This
Secretary
fucking guy.
Rubio, Secretary Hegseth, and other
Schumer is an
officials must come
ineffectual
before the Senate
cuck.
and testify under
He's
oath
got to
in
go.
public
He's
to
no
explain
leader.
why we're in this mess and what the goal even is. Even some Republicans are openly admitting they have no clue what the administration is trying to accomplish in the Middle East. Enough is enough. The American people do not want a war
There you go, Joshua.
with Iran that has no end. They do not want to see our troops deployed again and again to the Middle East, and they don't want to just have a knot in their stomach every time they pull up to the gas pump, and soon enough the grocery store as well, because of the higher prices caused.
I don't disagree, Joshua.
It must come to an end.
Sirens were activated in Bahrain and Kuwait a short while ago. Both countries have come under near daily Iranian attacks since the war began. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates reported interceptions of drones and missiles on Sunday. This comes as the Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council renewed his condemnation
Trump
of
keeps
Iranian
telling
attacks
us he
on
obliterated their
GCC member
military.
states. He said
And
the
they're
GCC
still launching
reserves the
missiles.
right under international law to take necessary measures to protect their security. Well, let's cross now to Malik Traina, who's live for us in Kuwait City. Malik, so sirens were activated in Kuwait a short while ago. What are you learning?
Yeah, well, just in the last hour, we heard the what's now the all-familiar sirens being raised here in Kuwait and also in Bahrain and also in the UAE. Officials in Abu Dhabi, local authorities said that due to debris from an interception of a ballistic missile, an Indian national sustained minor injuries in the Al Shuwamah area. Just about 15 minutes ago, Saudi Arabia said that it intercepted a drone in the eastern area. So, we're 3 weeks into this war now, and we've seen a relentless attacks from Iran against the Gulf. Something that
So are you a
officials
hacker, Billy?
have been saying once again that these attacks must stop. But Mohammed, today what everybody here
Me
in
too,
Kuwait
Joshua.
is talking about is
It's my
the
main form of
escalation
entertainment.
rhetoric. These threats
When
from
I'm not
Donald Trump,
creating content,
that he
I'm
would
watching
attack,
it all day.
Power plants in Iran, and Iran saying that it would retaliate against U.S. interests, power plants and desalination plants and information. I mean, people
Why not?
here
Give it a
take those
shot.
threats
What do you got to lose,
seriously
Josh?
because they've seen
Create
consequences
something.
from attacks
Doesn't
from
cost
America,
anything,
from US
unless you
when
want
they
it
hit
to.
Iran, right? Just in the last week, or earlier this week, when Israel
And Schumer
targeted
definitely
the
needs
South
to
Pars,
retire.
oil field, gas field in Iran, we saw repercussions here in the Gulf. The oil tanks in Bahrain have been hit. In Yanbu, the Yanbu oil facility in Saudi Arabia, the Ras Laffan facility in Qatar, the Al Ahmadi refinery port here in Kuwait, which is about 30 kilometers south of, in this direction of where I'm standing.
In this direction?
People
Over
get
there?
extremely worried about it. And as we edge closer and closer to this deadline that President Trump said, that 48 hours, people become extremely worried, right? People are talking about, generators if the power plants get hit, batteries, how to sustain electricity, and also desalination
Hope they're getting
plants,
ready.
these water plants. I mean, the Gulf
Might come.
relies heavily on these plants for drinking water. The Az-Zur desalination water plant here in Kuwait is one of the biggest in the Middle East. Desalination plants, 90% of drinking water here
For the
in
most
Kuwait,
part, Joshua, you're right.
is dependent
They're bought
on
and
these
paid for.
desalination plants. So people becoming extremely more concerned when they see this escalation in
Just look at
rhetoric and these
Fetterman.
threats by both Iran and the U.S.
He gets brain damage.
All right, that's
He goes
Malik Traina
MAGA.
live for us in Kuwait City. Thanks, Malik.
I voted for the fucking
On the
guy.
ground in Lebanon,
Not gonna happen
airstrikes on
again.
the south of the country have killed at least 4 people on Sunday.
Yep, they keep launching.
Israeli forces have attacked the Qasimiya Bridge, a key crossing linking Lebanon south to the rest of the country. President Joseph Aoun has called the attack a prelude to ground invasion. Israeli forces said the bridges are being used by Hezbollah and that they need to be destroyed to prevent attacks on northern Israel.
This stream tonight is pissing me off. Pissing me off. Unbelievable. Sorry, guys. It ain't me. I don't think. Doesn't look like me. I don't get it.
Extremely difficult
there
for
it is.
humanitarian aid efforts to continue, especially south of the Litani River. He also said it was a deliberate attempt by the Israelis to create a de facto situation on the ground in their attempt to create a buffer zone in southern Lebanon. The concern here is that as the Israelis intensify their attacks in the south, as the president mentioned, this is a precursor to a possible ground invasion. And we heard from the Ministry of Defense in Israel today that they've given orders to soldiers operating in northern Israel on these border areas with Lebanon to go ahead and conduct Gaza-like destruction of these border towns. So this is going to make it extremely difficult for families who might want to return to their homes if their towns and villages are completely destroyed. And this is something that people here in Beirut are feeling. There are tens of thousands of people displaced from the south of the country here in the capital, and there's no sign of any of this letting up anytime soon.
All right, that's Obeida Hito live for us from Beirut. Thanks so much, Obeida. And as Obeida was reporting there, the conflict has displaced more than 1 million Lebanese. Some are living with family or friends in hotels, government shelters, or on the streets. And while the country remains deeply sectarian, many people have found refuge with members of other religious communities. Bernard Smith reports from Jazin in southern Lebanon.
Churches are often seen as places of refuge, but in deeply sectarian Lebanon, a church offering shelter to Shia Muslim families.
I hear you, Joshua. I haven't watched regular news in
fleeing with nowhere to go
forever. This is the closest I get to regular news when I do this stuff.
The monastery has opened its doors.
I don't watch Fox or anything, man. I get all my news online.
With each group taking its
Mostly Blue Sky.
Even we as a monastery
Drudge
were
Report.
criticized by some people who questioned how we could host people who
Directly
might be
from
one
the
day
AP,
against us. But for
BBC.
us, the priority remains the human being.
St. Peter and Paul's monastery in southern Lebanon is sheltered from the fighting by the hills that surround it. But this is what people are escaping, just a 30-minute drive away. Towns and villages bombarded by Israeli airstrikes targeting Hezbollah positions.
We woke up to the sound of strikes. We were asleep. The first strike hit our village at
What
around
act is
2
that,
p.m.
Joshua?
We waited until we realized there was a war. Then we left.
Sounds familiar.
We spent the whole day on the road.
We hope to live in Lebanon hand in hand, without sectarianism, without political divisions. We hope to return to our villages soon for the war to end and for Lebanon to change for the better.
There are 18 religious sects recognized in Lebanon: Christian, Muslim, and Jewish.
I'm Christian and she's Muslim. We live together here and we cook together and we are all family.
Because Lebanon's state is so weak, people rely on their sects for jobs, for social welfare, for education, and that perpetuates division. This sort of cross-sect engagement is unusual, if welcome. St. Peter and Paul's is the only church sheltering Shia Muslims in this part of Lebanon, though there are some others in Beirut as well as Sunni Muslim mosques. They are the exceptions rather than the rule. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera, Jazin, southern Lebanon.
You're watching Al Jazeera. Here's a reminder of our top stories this hour. Israel is under another round of overnight Iranian missile attacks. Falling shrapnel has been reported in several locations across southern and central Israel. Some communities have reported fires and damage. Iran has rebuffed the U.S.'s threat to bomb its power plants if it doesn't reopen the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours.
Fuck with this stream already tonight. The fuck?
It's vowed to block the strait indefinitely and strike back against energy and desalination facilities.
Yeah, I'm reading about it now, Joshua.
Attacked. Israeli airstrikes have targeted the Qasmiya bridge in southern Lebanon across the Litani River. Israel says they're being used by Hezbollah. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has called the attack a prelude to ground invasion. Iraqi authorities say 3 airstrikes have targeted an Iranian-aligned armed group in its stronghold south of Baghdad. The group is a former paramilitary coalition called Hashd al-Sha'bi, also known as the Popular Mobilization Forces. Iraqi officials say the strikes came after an attack targeted a U.S. diplomatic and logistics center at Baghdad International Airport. Nicholas Hawk is live for us now in the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. Nick, how are the Americans responding to the attacks on the base?
Well, Mohammed, the Americans are responding first by activating their air defense system known as CRAM. So they've intercepted the latest drone attack on Victory Base. Then they're also pounding with airstrikes the Iran-backed militias in Iraq. Make no mistake, Mohammed, this is another battleground for the Americans. And then they're also evacuating those NATO forces. Remember, there are American NATO forces that announced their withdrawal from Iraq, their temporary withdrawal. So they're also being evacuated from Victory Base, which is just 20 kilometers west of Baghdad behind me. So those are the ways that the Americans are trying to tackle this, these attacks, these continuous attacks that are taking place against their positions, at least in Baghdad and south of Baghdad. Now, there are still positions in the north, in the Kurdish regions, but what's interesting here is that one of the Iran-backed militias in Iraq, Kataib Hezbollah, has declared or announced an ultimatum against the Americans. They have 5 more days to evacuate the U.S. embassy in the heart of the capital, or else they will launch attacks against the U.S. embassy. And that will have a greater impact for Iraqis because the U.S. embassy is in the green zone, as you know, in the heart of the capital, Baghdad. Mohammed.
Nick, let me also ask you about the sentiment amongst the public there when it comes to what's going on. I mean, how do Iraqis feel about these attacks?
No, I mean, the Iraqis here don't want to be dragged into this war. That's clear for them. And they're caught between Iran, a country which they share the largest land border with, and the United States. And so they are in a tough and difficult position with having so many Iran-backed militias inside the country and seeing these this escalation of violence, this tit for tat. Now, there's been 5 years of relative peace and economic boom. And then just a few days ago, the oil ministry of Iraq announced declaring a case of force majeure, which means that they're not able to hold their oil exports obligations to the oil companies. Now, Iraq relies on that revenue. That's 90% of its revenue, Mohammed. So that's going to have an impact on people. That's on the economic front. But also for people to have these explosions, to have these attacks. This is a country that doesn't have shelters like the Israelis or doesn't have their own air defense system. So they feel very vulnerable, caught in this war between the United States, Israel, and Iran. Mohammed?
All right, that's Al Jazeera's Nicholas Hawk live for us from Baghdad. Thanks so much, Nick. Iran has denied targeting a joint British-U.S. military base in the Indian Ocean. The attack was first reported on Saturday when the UK issued a statement condemning the attack and calling it unsuccessful. And despite Tehran's
What the fuck already with this stream? Jesus Christ.
range, including arguably the most crucial, the
Sorry again,
Ramstein
guys.
Air Base
I don't know.
in Germany, a key NATO installation. Iran has several weapons within its arsenal with a longer range. That includes the Khorramshahr and Sejil ballistic missiles, along with the Sumar cruise missile with an estimated range of between 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers. Destroying Iran's ballistic missile capabilities is a shared goal between the US and Israel. But it's difficult to determine how much of its capacity has been degraded since the war began.
Countries across the world are cutting fuel use as the conflict in the Middle East impacts supplies. Slovenia has limited fuel purchases.
This
Gas
is always
stations
a
across
good
the
thing.
country displayed signs limiting fuel to 30 to 50 liters per day for private vehicles. Long queues were seen outside the few stations which are open. Prime Minister Robert Golob is assuring the country has enough fuel and that the army is assisting to transport it.
For me, this is new. I didn't think it would happen so quickly, that it would be linked so quickly to the events taking place in Iran. I'm a bit surprised, but we'll see. I think there isn't much in reserve, and it's going to go down very fast, and we might run out of fuel.
Welcome to
rather
Trump's
quickly.
world.
Of course, it's not okay. We have two different cars, so we will have to now be careful which one to take. But the problem is because we go to different cities, that we will have to discuss what's the priority. So for the future, this will be really, really bad.
Anna Maria Jeller-Markowitz is a lead energy analyst for Institute
Assisting
for
with
Energy
what,
Economics
Billy?
and Financial Analysis.
Hacking?
She says the war's impact on energy markets is completely dependent on how long it lasts.
We have said from the beginning that the difficulty will be to understand how long will this war take to be to find a solution. So the escalation and the length of the war is adding to the pressure on the gas market and the oil market. And we have to think that around 20% of the LNG in the world is disrupted, and around 25% of the oil and oil products. So this is affecting the whole global oil and gas market. And the longer it takes, the more difficult it is to find a stabilization in the market, and we could see some demand destruction. I was analyzing yesterday and discussing with some colleagues on Friday that what I understand is that we have been seeing like red flag signals on the gas market, for example, in Europe, yeah? And sometimes we ignore them. You know, we are, as you said, we are getting so used to that we ignore all these red flags that are coming. We had a big situation in Europe 4 years ago. The gas market was in crisis. We found ways to kind of support a little bit the crisis, and that was reducing gas consumption. Renewables have been playing a vital
Come on. Unbelievable. Oh, ha ha ha. Got it, Billy. I don't know what the hell's going on with this stream tonight. Getting really pissed. Really pissed.
First time, leaders from across Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa are meeting under one roof, promoting a new alliance built on South-South cooperation.
Da segurança e da estabilidade.
The aim, more trade, investment, and a stronger collective voice of traditionally marginalized countries.
This shared history cannot be understood without clearly recognizing the transatlantic journeys of enslaved people and those who came here. 2 million Africans were torn from their homes, uprooted, stripped of their dignity for the economic and social benefit of contemporary society.
That legacy of slavery and colonialism shaping the debate, with leaders pushing for new cooperation from food to energy and climate. But those ambitions are unfolding against a world at war. Conflicts in Iran and Ukraine, attacks on Venezuela, and the threats against Cuba, all raising fears of a larger crisis and renewed colonialism.
We can't allow anyone to interfere with the territorial integrity of countries. It is a complete failure of the United Nations. The UN Security Council and its permanent members were meant to maintain peace, but they're the ones driving these wars.
Colombia's president facing new reports of a U.S. probe into alleged links to drug trafficking, though no charges have been filed, calling for an immediate ceasefire.
If we don't want the conflict in the Middle East to escalate into a global economic catastrophe, a global social crisis, and even a possible world war, then humanity as a whole must demand, both in words and in the streets, an immediate ceasefire.
The summit is partly a response to U.S. President Donald Trump gathering of right-wing leaders of the Americas 2 weeks ago in Florida, where he demanded loyalty for a regional initiative against crime,
That's all Trump knows how to do is demand.
For some leaders, it reflects a familiar tension between U.S.-led priorities and a push for the global South to set its own.
All right, guys. Look, I don't know what's going on with this stream tonight, but this keeps happening. I'm going to shut it down early.
But global tensions remain hard to ignore.
I'm going to shut down in 15 minutes. 9 o'clock. I'm going to end it. This is nuts.
All right, let's take a look at some other news now. Leftist candidates have performed well in France's municipal elections. Socialist Party candidate Emmanuel Grégoire has won the race for Paris mayor. Exit polls also indicate that Marseille's left-wing mayor Benoît Payan defeated his far-right rival Franck Alicio. These polls are being seen as a litmus test for next year's presidential elections.
Today, Paris has chosen to remain true to its history. A huge thank you to the women and men of Paris who, wherever they may come from, chose to unite the left and the Greens in the second round. Tonight, this victory represents a promise, a demanding one. It is the triumph of a certain vision of Paris, a vibrant, progressive Paris, for the people, a Paris for everyone.
Natasha Butler reports from Paris.
Well, Paris has a new mayor, the socialist politician Emmanuel Grégoire. He was the deputy of the outgoing socialist mayor Anne Hidalgo. Now, in his victory speech, Grégoire said that he wanted to unite all Parisians, even those, of course, who didn't vote for him.
This victory represents a promise. It is the triumph of a certain vision of Paris, a vibrant, progressive Paris for the people, a Paris for everyone.
Grégoire comfortably defeated his nearest rival, the Conservative politician Rachida Dati.
I did not manage to convince enough people that change was not only possible, but above all, that it was necessary.
Now, the far-right National Rally Party of Marine Le Pen had hoped to win the city of Marseille in the south. It had been a very tight race with the incumbent socialist mayor, but in the end, it was the socialist mayor that took the city. Disappointing for the far right, but they did win a number of other smaller towns in France, as did the hard left. They also won towns including Roubaix and Saint-Denis. The Conservative Party also took a number of major towns across France. Well, this was a local election, so of course people were voting mainly on local issues like housing, crime and security. Nevertheless, this vote was certainly being seen as an opportunity to test the waters for many political parties ahead of next year's critical presidential election, because of course Emmanuel Macron cannot run again in 2027. Natasha Butler, Al Jazeera, Paris.
3 Palestinians were killed after an Israeli airstrike targeted the Nusayrat refugee camp in central Gaza. In a separate strike on Sunday, 3 others were injured in an attack on a residential building in Gaza City. Israel has continued to bomb Gaza despite a U.S. brokered ceasefire in October. More than 600 Palestinians have been killed since then. Police in Tirana have clashed with protesters who are demanding the resignation of the Albanian government following corruption allegations against the deputy prime minister. Demonstrators hurled petrol bombs and fireworks at Prime Minister Edi Rama's office. Police responded by spraying demonstrators with water cannons. Belinda Baluku is alleged to have interfered in major infrastructure projects and favored certain companies, charges she denies. Incumbent Slovenian Prime Minister Robert Golob has claimed victory in tight parliamentary elections. That's despite official results showing a neck-and-neck finish with the conservative candidate Janez Janša. 99% of votes have been counted so far. The result could set up complex coalition talks in the EU member state, amid concerns over foreign interference allegations and the country's political direction.
Now that we have received the citizens' confidence, we can change this trend of public skepticism, and we can now think about going forward towards a future under a free sun.
Thank you, Billy.
Cuba has restored power to nearly half of the capital, Havana, less than 24 hours after the national grid collapsed for the second time in a week. The country's aging energy grid is under growing strain because of a U.S.-imposed oil blockade. The blackouts have left many struggling to get basic supplies, including food and water. Activists have started arriving as part of a global effort to bring aid to the struggling island, as our Latin America editor Lucia Newman reports from the Cuban capital.
I'm in Old Havana. You can see people are strolling around.
Another
it's a
crisis
Saturday night here.
created by
They're
Trump.
spending the evening here with
That's
their
what he's
friends,
good at.
although nothing has
That's what
happened,
he's
but
best
we're
at.
actually in the middle of yet another nationwide blackout. It's completely dark out here, except for a couple of lights from hotels that have generators. This is the second time in less than a week that the power has gone out all over the country. The government says that it's trying to get it back on again. Nobody knows how long that will take. So that means most of these people will spend the night in the darkness. Thank goodness it's not in the middle of summer yet. It's not so hot, so they might be able to sleep in their apartments. But people are fed up with this. It means that they can't get water. The water pipes don't work. It means that their food begins to rot in their refrigerators. It's happening more and more. And one of the reasons, of course, is not just because the power system in this country, which runs on oil, is decrepit, it's old, it needs repairs, but also because President Donald Trump has imposed a total fuel blockade around Cuba, hoping that it will collapse, bringing it at least to the brink of collapse. But there has been at least one, you could say, optimistic note throughout the day today, and that was at a hospital which has been running out of medicine. A group of activists from Puerto Rico arrive at the Salvador Allende Hospital in Havana, bringing gifts in the form of badly needed medical supplies. They say they brought what they could in suitcases. The donations include needles for injecting insulin, the insulin itself, antibiotics, prednisona for acute allergies, medicine for asthma as well, which this country has almost run out of. It is a heartwarming donation, there's no doubt about that. But no one has any illusion that this will do more than just make a tiny dent in the acute crisis this country is having in its health system. Since the Trump administration imposed a total fuel blockade on Cuba more than 3 months ago,
massive
an already
RAM
dire
shortage.
economic situation has become desperate. Former UK Labour leader Jeremy
My
Corbyn
kid wants to custom build a new gaming computer, and he's like, no way,
It is an obsession.
not paying these
There's
prices.
no question about that. Every time he's asked a question, he then
Insane.
goes on saying, I will take Cuba. And as was pointed
It's all
out
being
earlier,
sucked
in the
up
way
for
that
the
Theodore
AI
Roosevelt took
data
power,
centers.
I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think the rest of the world would allow it.
Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel invited them to Havana's Convention Palace to thank them for their solidarity. But he also assured them that Cuba is preparing to defend itself against a possible U.S. attack.
When
the U.S. invaded Venezuela using powerful bombs and state-of-the-art technology to kidnap President Maduro, they thought it would be simple. But 32 Cuban combatants defended him and fought to the death. What wouldn't millions of Cubans do to defend this country?
So it could be that
He's referring to President Trump's repeated threat to, quote, take over Cuba as soon as he's finished with Iran.
taking Cuba.
It's uncertain how all this will play out, as Cuba's government continues offering what it calls a serious and responsible dialogue with the White House to resolve their differences. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Havana.
A strike on a hospital in Sudan's East Darfur state has killed at least 64 people and destroyed part of the facility. The World Health Organization
watched Linus.
says the El Dain teaching hospital was targeted
Linus
on Friday.
MKBHD.
Those killed include patients,
Mr.
2
Who's the
nurses,
Boss.
and a doctor. About 90
I
other
watched them
people
all.
were injured. It's not
I
yet
used to build
clear
my
who
own
carried out the
computers.
strike. Government
My son knows
sources
how to
and
do
the
it.
paramilitary
He just doesn't want to pay the
paramilitary
price for the
RSF
RAM.
have blamed each other. For years, displaced families in southeastern Niger have relied on humanitarian aid to survive. With charities now suspending their work, many say they've been left without food, jobs, or support. Victoria Gatenby reports.
Diffa in southeastern Niger is already dealing with the fallout from armed groups operating in the region, along with widespread poverty. Now displaced people are facing even greater uncertainty because the charities they depend on have suspended their services. Hajia Balki is preparing a meal for her children with the little flour she has left. She's been here for nearly a decade after fleeing violence between
What do you think of the new
Nigerian
Mac
army and the armed
Neos,
group
Billy?
Boko Haram.
You like those?
We were not happy when
Price
some
is right.
NGOs stopped their activities. Many families can no longer find enough
Although
food
they're
to
not
eat.
really gaming
My most
computers.
urgent need is food for my children.
The suspensions are part of a government effort to audit humanitarian aid funding and enforce new regulations. But on the ground, the immediate impact has been the loss of vital support.
We have lost a very important partner. For example, USAID supported projects promoting women's leadership and peace building in Diffa.
The closures are also affecting those who relied on relief programs for work.
What the state has decided, we as citizens obey. I used to have a construction company funded by NGOs, but when they stop working, an entire chain of people is affected. Now I'm unemployed and I have children to support.
Diffa is in the Lake Chad region where years of conflict have forced people from their homes. Many are from Borno State in northeastern Nigeria. Diffa hosts around 175,000 displaced people and more than 120,000 refugees. There are also around 36,000 people who've returned after fleeing earlier violence, often because they have few other options. With insecurity in Diffa already high and the needs of displaced families growing, there are fears the crisis could deepen in the weeks ahead. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera.
A funeral has been held here in Doha for 7 people who died in a military helicopter crash. The victims included 4 Qatari armed forces members, a Turkish soldier, and personnel from a Turkish defense company. The Emir of Qatar attended the ceremony at Doha's Grand Mosque. An investigation is underway into the cause of the crash. Both Qatar and Turkey said they believe it was caused by a technical malfunction. When Cyclone Ditwa swept through Sri Lanka in November, it damaged tens of thousands of official documents. 4 months later, teams are still trying to salvage everything from birth certificates to land deeds. Manel Fernandez has this report from Colombo.
Restorers at Sri Lanka's National Archives are racing against time. They're trying to save tens of thousands of official documents damaged during Cyclone Ditwa late last year.
The pages are stuck to each other. We are separating them and inserting sheets of paper between the pages to absorb the water.
Samira Rasangani is part of this team of 20 restorers working on files from here, the Kandy Court Complex, one of the worst affected institutions. More than 15,000 active case files and 160,000 finalized case records were soaked. Judges, court staff and the military worked hard to clean the files before freezing them, the best way to stop mold from setting in. The Bebalagamas file is one of them. The government acquired the couple's property in Galagithara in central Sri Lanka as part of a highway project in 2017. After almost a decade, court proceedings were near completion and part payment of compensation had been approved. But everything is on hold until the original documents are available.
The case took so many years, and just when it's about to finish, there's more delay. We have been stuck in limbo, unable to finish building or buy a new property and move out, and now this.
Restoration is a slow and painstaking process. There are also dangers.
I never played it, Billy.
Documents damaged by floodwaters can be full of microbes like mold, which can't be seen. This can get into your body and make you sick. So there's a big
Is that the
risk
one
when
where you
working
build
on these
out
files.
everything?
The team says it's
Like
determined
almost
to
like a
salvage
sim?
as much as possible. Many people's lives are on hold as restorers work to save thousands of active court files, including land disputes, divorce and custody cases.
Like a Command and
Authorities say
Conquer
the
type game?
disaster has highlighted the urgent
That I used to
need
play all the
to
time.
conserve official documents. The United Nations and donors are helping with the challenging task.
I believe that this will set a stage for us to work more closely with public authorities in ensuring that they have a proper records management system, a disaster risk management system to deal with crises in the future.
The complex operation will likely take a long time to be completed, leaving those with active cases, like the Babylagamas, no choice but to wait and hope. Vinay Fernandez, Al Jazeera, Colombo.
Hawaii's National Guard is assisting first responders with search and rescue operations following intense
Cool, I'll
flash
have to
floods.
look it up, man.
The National Weather Service issued
Sorry
a
about
flood
your
warning for
laptop.
the island of Oahu. The flooding on the island is now the worst Hawaii
That
has
sucks.
seen in over 20 years. We're going to take a short break now. Stay with us. The news continues here at the top of the hour.
All right, guys, that's it for tonight. Thank you all so much for showing up. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the chats. Thank you for liking and subscribing. I'm probably going to start doing these during the weeks as well. I'll figure out the hours, sometimes during the day, sometimes at night. Just stay tuned. Billy, thanks for showing up again, brother. Appreciate it. Love you all. Have a good night. Have a good week.